Hello guys, welcome to Fictional Vortex. So in this video, we will see what if Naruto possessed the symbiote god Knull's power and the Necrosword Naruto x Black Cat, Marvel. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Sword and the Shadow. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Konoha as Naruto Uzumaki leapt from rooftop to rooftop, his orange and black jacket flapping behind him. 3 years had passed since the Fourth Great Ninja War, and while peace had settled over the 5 great nations, something restless stirred in the hero's heart. Another day of paperwork and diplomatic meetings, Naruto grumbled, landing on a water tower and gazing over the village. Is this really what being acknowledged feels like? He'd achieved his dream of recognition, but the transition from wartime hero to peacetime administrator left him feeling hollow. Kakashi, now the 6th Hokage, had been grooming him as successor, which meant fewer missions and more diplomacy. The communication device in his pocket buzzed. He pulled it out, recognizing Shikamaru's frequency. "Yo, Naruto. The Hokage needs you. Something's come up." Naruto's face broke into a grin. "Tell him I'm on my way." He pocketed the device and took off toward the Hokage Tower, a surge of excitement pushing away the afternoon's tedium. Minutes later, he stood before Kakashi, whose masked face revealed nothing of his thoughts. "Strange energy readings have been detected at the Temple of Echoes," Kakashi said, sliding a mission scroll across his desk. "Normally I'd send a regular team, but these readings, they're unlike any chakra signature we've ever recorded." Naruto picked up the scroll. "The Temple of Echoes? That old ruin in the northern mountains?" "The same. According to ancient records, it was built long before the founding of the hidden villages, possibly even predating the Sage of Six Paths. And you want me to check it out?" "Just me." Naruto tried to mask his eagerness but failed miserably. Kakashi's visible eye crinkled with amusement. "You're practically bouncing, Naruto." "Yes, just you. I need someone powerful enough to handle any threat, but also..." He hesitated. "Also what?" "Someone with a unique chakra signature." The readings seemed to respond to Bijou energy. Naruto's hand unconsciously went to his stomach, where the seal containing Kurama, the nine-tailed fox, had once been visible. Their relationship had evolved dramatically since the war, from reluctant prisoner and jailer to something approaching friendship. "What do you think, Kurama?" Naruto asked inwardly. Inside his mindscape, the massive fox opened one crimson eye. "I sense something old. Older than me, perhaps. We should investigate." "We're in," Naruto said to Kakashi. "When do I leave?" "Immediately." "And Naruto," Kakashi's tone grew serious. "This is reconnaissance. If you encounter something beyond your capabilities, retreat and report back." Naruto grinned, already backing toward the door. "When have I ever run from a fight?" "That's exactly what worries me," Kakashi sighed as Naruto disappeared in a blur of orange and black. The Temple of Echoes stood like a jagged wound in the mountainside, its ancient stone archways half collapsed, black obsidian walls reflecting no light despite the bright moon overhead. Naruto approached cautiously, 2 shadow clones flanking him as scouts. "This place gives me the creeps," he muttered. "Focus," Kurama growled in his mind. "Something powerful dwells here. I can feel it, pulling at us." Naruto nodded, creating another shadow clone to maintain a communication link with Konoha before stepping through the temple entrance. The moment he crossed the threshold, the torches along the walls ignited with black flames. "Definitely not normal fire," Naruto said, kunai in hand as he advanced. The interior of the temple defied architectural logic. Corridors twisted at impossible angles, staircases led to ceilings, and doorways opened to blank walls. Yet somehow, Naruto found himself drawn deeper, an invisible thread pulling him forward. "Kurama, what's happening? I feel like something's calling me." The fox's voice came with uncharacteristic hesitation. It's not calling you, Naruto. It's calling me, or rather, my chakra. A tremor ran through the temple. Dust and small stones rained from the ceiling. Naruto quickened his pace, following the pull until he reached a vast circular chamber. In its center stood a simple stone altar, and upon it, a sword unlike any he'd ever seen. The weapon was pure darkness given form, not black metal, but something that seemed to absorb light itself. Its edges constantly shifted and rippled like living shadow. Kurama, what is that thing? I don't know. It's not from our world. Stay back, Naruto. But even as Kurama warned him, Naruto found himself stepping forward, drawn by an irresistible force. The sword pulsed in response, tendrils of darkness reaching out toward him. It's alive. Naruto whispered, now standing before the altar. The moment his fingertips touched the hilt, chaos erupted. Living darkness exploded from the sword, engulfing his arm, then spreading across his body like living ink. Naruto screamed, feeling the substance boring into his chakra network, intertwining with the Nine-Tails' energy. Inside his mindscape, Kurama roared and thrashed as shadows invaded their shared space, taking form as a tall, pale figure with a twisted red spiral on its chest and a fanged dragon-like emblem. I am Knull, the figure spoke in a voice like the void between stars. God of the symbiotes. Your vessel houses great power, beast. Together, you will make a worthy avatar. Get out. Kurama snarled, swiping massive claws through the apparition. This body belongs to Naruto and me alone. Outside, Naruto collapsed to his knees, his body convulsing as two immense powers warred within him. Orange chakra and black symbiote matter erupted from his skin in competing spirals. The temple shook violently, stones cracking and falling from the ceiling. Stop fighting. Naruto gasped, clutching his head. Both of you. Stop. His shout echoed with unexpected power, momentarily freezing both Kurama and the invading presence. In that moment of clarity, Naruto seized control. This is my body, he growled, forcing himself to his feet. If you want to stay, Knull or whatever you are, you play by my rules. The darkness receded slightly, coiling around him rather than through him. The temple stopped shaking, but a new disturbance caught Naruto's attention, a tearing sound, like fabric ripping on a cosmic scale. The air across the chamber shimmered and split open, revealing a swirling vortex of blue energy. A figure leapt through, a woman in a skin-tight black outfit, with platinum blonde hair flowing out from behind a domino mask. She landed in a crouch, metal claws extending from her fingertips. Well, she purred, rising with cat-like grace. Looks like I'm late to the party. Naruto, still struggling with the symbiote bonded to him, managed to form a Rasengan in his hand, though now the spiraling chakra sphere was threaded with darkness. Who are you? He demanded. The woman circled him slowly, assessing. Name's Black Cat. Or Felicia Hardy, if you're feeling friendly. Her eyes fixed on the rippling darkness covering half his body. And that nasty little parasite you're wearing? That's why I'm here. Parasite? Naruto growled, feeling the symbiote bristle with rage at the word. Touchy. Felicia tilted her head. You're not fully bonded yet. There's still time to separate you before. A deafening rumble interrupted her as the temple floor began to crack. Stone guardians, massive humanoid figures with obsidian bodies, emerged from the walls, their eyes glowing with the same darkness that now coiled around Naruto. Temple guardians, Felicia muttered. Always with the temple guardians. 6 stone titans surrounded them, each easily 15 feet tall with armor carved from the same light-absorbing material as the sword. Naruto shifted into a fighting stance, the symbiote instinctively forming armor across his body. I don't know who you are, lady, but we can talk after we deal with these guys. Fair enough, sunshine. Felicia extended her claws fully. Just don't get in my way. The first guardian lunged, stone fist crashing down where Naruto had stood a split second before. He countered with a kick that should have shattered stone but merely chipped the creature's arm. "These things are tough," he called. "No kidding." Felicia was a blur of motion, evading another guardian's grasp with acrobatic flips that defied gravity. "Regular attacks won't work. They're infused with Knull's power." Naruto dodged another blow, feeling Kurama's chakra surge as the symbiote responded to his need. "Then let's try something not so regular." He formed a familiar cross-shaped hand seal. Shadow Clone Jutsu. 20 clones appeared, each partially covered in the symbiotic darkness. The guardians paused, momentarily confused by the multiple targets. Felicia landed beside the real Naruto, eyebrows raised above her mask. "Neat trick. Got any others?" "Just getting started." Naruto grinned as his clones attacked in coordinated pairs. "What about you? You're not exactly normal yourself." "Honey, you have no idea." She vaulted over a guardian's shoulder, planting what looked like small metal discs on its back. "Fire in the hole." The discs exploded, cracking the guardian's stone body. It staggered but didn't fall. "They regenerate," she warned as the cracks filled with darkness. Inside Naruto, Kurama and the symbiote continued their struggle for dominance, but gradually, a reluctant synchronization began to form as both recognized the immediate threat. "Naruto," Kurama growled. "Use my chakra with the symbiote. They're both energy forms, they can be made compatible." "You sure about that?" Naruto asked mentally. "No, but we don't have much choice." Naruto nodded, allowing Kurama's chakra to flow while simultaneously embracing the symbiote rather than fighting it. The sensation was bizarre, like ice and fire flowing through his veins simultaneously, painful yet exhilarating. His body transformed. Orange chakra cloak merged with the black symbiote, creating a form that was neither fully Bijou mode nor fully symbiote, something new. His skin turned deep crimson, the markings of Kurama's chakra mode now black against the red. The symbiote formed a flowing mane around his neck and shoulders, resembling Kurama's fur. "Now that's interesting," Felicia remarked, landing beside him after avoiding another attack. Naruto flexed his hands, feeling unimaginable power surging through him. "Let's try this again." He vanished in a burst of speed, reappearing inside a guardian's guard. His fist, now covered in both symbiote matter and chakra, punched clean through the stone chest. The guardian froze, then collapsed into rubble. "One down," Naruto called, already moving toward the next. Felicia whistled, using her grappling hook to swing around another guardian. "Show off." Between Naruto's enhanced powers and Felicia's acrobatic fighting style, they made short work of the remaining guardians. As the last one crumbled, Naruto's transformation receded slightly, the symbiote settling into a more controlled bond with his chakra network. The temple, however, began to collapse around them, the death of its guardians triggering some ancient failsafe. "Time to go," Felicia said, already sprinting toward the exit. Naruto followed, but paused at the altar. The sword, the Necrosword, as knowledge from the symbiote informed him, still lay there. Without thinking, he grabbed it. The moment his hand closed around the hilt, the sword melted into his arm, becoming one with the symbiote. "That can't be good," he muttered, racing after Felicia. They burst from the temple entrance just as it collapsed behind them, sending up a cloud of dust and debris. In the clearing outside, they finally had a moment to catch their breath, and to face each other properly. Felicia removed her mask, revealing striking green eyes that studied Naruto with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "You're handling that symbiote surprisingly well for a newbie." "I've had practice sharing my body," Naruto replied, feeling the symbiote retreat beneath his skin, becoming like a second layer rather than an external suit. Only his eyes showed the change, blue irises now ringed with red against black sclera. "Now, who are you really, and what is this thing?" Felicia sat on a fallen log, stretching her legs. Like I said, name's Felicia Hardy. Where I come from, I'm known as the Black Cat, professional thief, occasional hero, full-time trouble. She nodded toward Naruto's chest, where the symbiote had formed a subtle spiral pattern beneath his jacket. That thing is a symbiote, a living costume, basically. But not just any symbiote. It's bonded with the Necrosword, which contains the essence of Knull, the god of symbiotes. God of symbiotes? Naruto frowned. Never heard of him. You wouldn't have. He's not from your world. Felicia leaned forward. I'm not either. I followed that sword through a dimensional rift when it was stolen from containment at Alchemax. Different dimension? Naruto's eyes widened. Like Kagaya's dimensions. Don't know who that is, but sure, let's go with that. Felicia stood, pacing restlessly. The important thing is that sword, now bonded to you, is ridiculously dangerous. Knull used it to slaughter gods. Inside Naruto's mindscape, Kurama growled at this information. The fox had managed to establish an uneasy boundary with the symbiote essence, each keeping to their own territories within Naruto's consciousness. I can feel it, Naruto admitted. The power. It's tempting. And that's exactly the problem. Felicia stepped closer. Look, I came here to retrieve the sword before it bonded with someone. Too late for that now, but we've still got a bigger problem. Which is? I wasn't the only one following it. She pointed to the tree lean, where hooded figures now emerged from the shadows. They were. At least 20 cultists in black robes approached, each wearing a mask bearing a twisted red spiral symbol, the same emblem Naruto had seen on the Knull apparition. They moved with eerie synchronization, like puppets on shared strings. The Abyss cult, Felicia explained quickly. Knull worshippers. They engineered the sword's theft and transport to your world. Why? Because your world has something mine doesn't, chakra. Felicia extended her claws again. They believe combining Knull's power with chakra will allow them to resurrect him fully. The cultists stopped 30 feet away. Their leader stepped forward, removing his mask to reveal a face half consumed by symbiote matter. The vessel is chosen, he intoned. The Abyss King shall rise in this fertile realm. Surrender yourself, chosen one, and your ascension will be painless. Naruto felt the symbiote within him respond to the cultist's words, rippling beneath his skin with anticipation. Kurama's growl echoed in his mind, bringing him back to himself. Not happening, Naruto called back. Whatever this Knull guy is, he's not taking over my body. The cultist smiled, revealing 2 sharp teeth. The choice is not yours to make. The seed is planted. You will become his vessel, willing or not. He raised his arms. Brothers and sisters of the Abyss, claim what is ours. The cultists attacked as one, each drawing weapons made of the same living darkness as the Necrosword. What they lacked in chakra, they made up for with fanatical coordination and symbiote-enhanced strength. Back to back. Felicia called, moving to stand with Naruto. He nodded, forming a Rasengan that now swirled with both blue chakra and black symbiote tendrils. These guys don't know who they're dealing with. The first wave of cultists reached them, dark blades slashing. Naruto ducked under one swing and drove his Rasengan into the attacker's chest, sending them flying back into 3 others. The symbiote responded to his combat needs instinctively, forming armor over vulnerable points and extending his reach with tentacle-like appendages. Beside him, Felicia moved like liquid shadow, her fighting style all graceful flips and devastating kicks. She wasn't using chakra, that much was obvious, but her physical abilities far exceeded normal human limitations. Not bad, Whiskers, she called, using her grappling hook to yank a cultist off their feet. You fight like this often? More than I'd like, Naruto replied, creating 3 shadow clones to handle a new group of attackers. Less than I miss. The battle flowed across the temple clearing, cultists constantly regrouping for coordinated strikes. Their leader remained at the back, chanting in an unknown language that seemed to strengthen the symbiote weapons his followers wielded. "We need to take out the head guy," Naruto said during a momentary lull. "I can feel him drawing on the symbiote power somehow." Felicia nodded, breathing hard. "Good call. I'll create a distraction, you go straight for him." Before Naruto could protest the dangerous plan, she was already in motion, throwing what looked like small metal spheres into the largest concentration of cultists. The spheres erupted with blinding light, causing the symbiote-infused cultists to shriek and recoil. "Now," she shouted. Naruto didn't waste the opportunity. He summoned Kurama's chakra, allowing it to flow alongside the symbiote rather than against it. The combination sent him rocketing across the battlefield in a blur of orange and black, directly toward the cult leader. The man's eyes widened in shock as Naruto appeared before him, hand already forming a new technique, a Rasengan, but one threaded with both Kurama's chakra and symbiote tendrils. "Symbiote Kurama Rasengan!" Naruto shouted, driving the spiraling orb into the leader's chest. The impact sent the man flying backward, crashing through trees until he disappeared from sight. The remaining cultists froze, their psychic connection to their leader suddenly severed. "Retreat," one called, and they scattered into the forest, melting into shadows with unnatural speed. Naruto stood breathing heavily, the combined power gradually receding. The symbiote, having tasted battle through him, hummed with satisfaction beneath his skin. Kurama, surprisingly, seemed less antagonistic toward the invading presence now that they'd fought together. "Nice move back there," Felicia said, approaching with a slight limp. A cut above her eye dripped blood down her cheek. "You're full of surprises, aren't you?" Naruto grinned, though his expression faltered when he saw her injuries. "You're hurt." "I've had worse." She wiped the blood away with the back of her hand. "So, what now? We've got cultists on the loose, you've got a god trying to possess you, and I'm stuck in a dimension where people can walk up trees and shoot fireballs. First, we get you patched up," Naruto decided. "Then we head back to Konoha. If anyone can help figure this out, it's our researchers there." "Konoha? My village. About 2 hours from here at normal speed." He studied her for a moment. "Can you travel?" Felicia stretched, wincing slightly. "I'll manage. Just don't expect me to keep up with whatever super speed thing you were doing." Naruto's symbiote rippled, forming tendrils that extended from his back like wings. "I don't think that'll be a problem." Before Felicia could react, the tendrils wrapped around her waist, lifting her off the ground. She yelped in surprise, claws automatically extending. "Whoa! Hands, or whatever those are, to yourself, buddy." Naruto laughed. "Relax. This is just the fastest way to travel." The symbiote secured her against his back. "Hold on tight." With Felicia clinging to him, Naruto took off through the forest, moving at speeds that turned the trees into blurs. The symbiote enhanced his already impressive physical abilities, allowing him to cover ground faster than ever before. As they traveled, Naruto felt 3 distinct presences within him, his own consciousness, Kurama's familiar rumbling presence, and now the alien intelligence of the symbiote, carrying echoes of Knull's godlike power. It was uncomfortable, crowded, even, but not as hostile as it had been initially. "So in your world," he called over his shoulder, "are there others like you? People with special abilities?" Felicia, who had buried her face against his neck to shield it from the wind, raised her head slightly. "More than you can imagine. Some born with powers, others who gain them through accidents or technology. I'm actually pretty normal by comparison." "You don't seem normal to me," Naruto replied honestly. "Those moves of yours, and you're stronger than any civilian I've seen." "Let's just say I've been enhanced," Felicia said cryptically. "What about you? Before you got the symbiote, that orange energy and those clones?" "Chakra," Naruto explained, leaping across a ravine. "Everyone has it here, but ninja like me are trained to use it. The orange stuff is specific to me and Kurama. Kurama. The nine-tailed fox. He's, kind of like your symbiote, I guess. A separate being that lives inside me. Felicia was quiet for a moment. So you already had a roommate before this Knull thing moved in? Crowded. You have no idea, Naruto muttered. They reached Konoha just as dusk was settling over the village. Naruto slowed as they approached the main gate, allowing the symbiote to recede completely beneath his skin. To casual observers, he looked normal, though a sharp-eyed ninja might notice the subtle darkness swirling in his blue eyes. Impressive place, Felicia remarked, taking in the village sprawled before them, dominated by the Hokage monument with its carved faces watching over everything. Home, Naruto said simply, then frowned. We should probably get you some different clothes before we go in. You'll, stand out. Felicia glanced down at her skin-tight black catsuit, complete with fur trim and metal accessories. What, this isn't standard fashion around here. Not exactly. After a quick transformation technique from Naruto, Felicia appeared to be wearing standard Konoha civilian clothing, a simple blue tunic and pants that would draw far less attention than her catsuit. Just an illusion, Naruto explained. But it'll help us avoid unnecessary questions until we reach the Hokage. They passed through the gates, Naruto nodding to Izumo and Kotetsu on guard duty. The two Chunin raised eyebrows at his companion but didn't question him. The hero of the Fourth Great Ninja War had earned some leeway. As they walked through the village streets, now lit by paper lanterns as night fell, Felicia took everything in with obvious curiosity. The mixture of traditional architecture with modern conveniences, the diverse population, the occasional ninja leaping across rooftops, all of it clearly fascinated her. Your world is beautiful, she said softly. Different, but beautiful. Naruto glanced at her, surprised by the genuine appreciation in her voice. You sound like you might not hate being stuck here. Something flickered across her face, vulnerability quickly masked by her usual confidence. I've learned to adapt wherever I land. Survival skill. She nudged him playfully. Besides, the company isn't terrible. Before Naruto could respond, a familiar voice called his name. Sakura Haruno approached, medical kit in hand, clearly just finishing a hospital shift. Naruto. You're back already? Kakashi-sensei said you might be gone for days. Her green eyes shifted to Felicia, narrowing slightly with curiosity and something else, caution, perhaps. Change of plans, Naruto said, scratching the back of his head. Sakura, this is Felicia. She's, a consultant, Felicia smoothly interjected, extending her hand. Specialized knowledge. Very hush-hush. Sakura shook her hand, unconvinced. Aha. And what exactly are you consulting on? Before Felicia could fabricate another half-truth, Naruto swayed slightly, a wave of dizziness washing over him. The symbiote, disturbed by something, writhed beneath his skin. Naruto. Sakura stepped forward, medical instincts kicking in. What's wrong? He straightened, forcing the symbiote to calm through sheer willpower. Nothing. Just tired from the mission. We need to report to Kakashi-sensei right away. Sakura's suspicious gaze darted between them. I'll come with you. Not necessary, Felicia said, perhaps too quickly. Actually, Sakura, Naruto intervened, we could use your medical expertise. Something happened at the temple. Inside him, Kurama growled in warning. Be careful, Naruto. The symbiote doesn't want to be examined. I know, Naruto responded mentally. But we need help understanding this thing. The three made their way to the Hokage Tower, an uncomfortable silence hanging between them. Naruto could feel the symbiote growing more agitated with each step, while Kurama attempted to contain its influence. Kakashi was still in his office despite the late hour, papers stacked high on his desk. He looked up as they entered, his visible eye widening slightly at the sight of Felicia. I see you brought back more than information, he remarked mildly. Naruto nodded. Kakashi-sensei, this is complicated. The energy readings at the temple, it wasn't chakra. It was something else. Something from another dimension. Over the next half hour, Naruto and Felicia took turns explaining what had happened, the Necrosword, Knull, the symbiote bond, the Abyss cult, all of it. Throughout the explanation, Kakashi remained impassive, though his shoulders tensed when Naruto described the merging of Kurama's chakra with the symbiote power. When they finished, silence filled the room for several long moments. "Show me," Kakashi finally said. Naruto hesitated, then nodded. He closed his eyes, allowing the symbiote to emerge partially, not a full transformation, but enough that his skin darkened to a deep crimson, black patterns swirling across his face and hands. Sakura gasped. Kakashi stood slowly. "Can you control it?" the Hokage asked. "Mostly," Naruto answered honestly. "Kurama helps. They've reached, not an understanding exactly, but they're not fighting anymore. And this Knull entity? I can feel him," Naruto admitted. Like a voice in the background, always whispering. But he's not in control." Kakashi exchanged glances with Sakura. "I want you in the hospital for observation and testing. If this symbiote is truly from another dimension, we need to understand it before." "No," Felicia interrupted, stepping forward. "You don't understand. The more you probe and prod at it, the more agitated it will become. Trust me, I've seen what happens when people try to separate symbiotes from unwilling hosts. It's not pretty. And we should trust you because..." Sakura challenged. "Because I followed that thing across dimensions to stop it from falling into the wrong hands," Felicia shot back. "Because I've seen what it can do when it's angry. And because right now, Naruto is handling it better than anyone has a right to expect." The tension in the room thickened. Naruto, feeling the symbiote respond to the confrontation with increasing agitation, stepped between them. "She's right," he said quietly. "I can feel it reacting to this conversation. It doesn't want to be studied or contained." He turned to Kakashi. "But we need to understand it, and we need to deal with those cultists. They won't stop coming." Kakashi considered for a long moment, then nodded. "A compromise, then. No hospital, but Sakura will monitor your condition daily. And you'll work with our intelligence division to track these cultists." "Agreed," Naruto said before anyone could object. "One more thing," Kakashi added. "Until we understand the full extent of this bonding, you're removed from the regular mission roster. Consider this your only assignment." Naruto started to protest but felt the symbiote pulse in what seemed like approval. The creature wanted freedom to explore its new host, not to be constrained by missions. "Fine," he conceded. "As for you," Kakashi turned to Felicia. "Since you're our only source of information on these symbiotes, you'll be staying in Konoha as a special consultant. Under supervision, of course." Felicia's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Of course. And who gets the pleasure of supervising me?" "Naruto will accommodate you," Kakashi said simply. "Since you're both involved in this situation, it makes sense to keep you together." Naruto and Felicia exchanged surprised glances. The arrangement made tactical sense, but it was unexpected nonetheless. "If there's nothing else," Kakashi concluded, "you're dismissed. Report back tomorrow after you've both rested." Outside the Hokage Tower, the night air had grown cool. Naruto led Felicia through quieter streets toward his apartment, both lost in their own thoughts. "You okay with this arrangement?" he finally asked. "Staying with me, I mean." Felicia shrugged. "Better than a cell, which I half expected. Your Hokage seems reasonable, if cautious. He has to be. The village is his responsibility." Naruto glanced sideways at her. "You never really explained why you care so much about the Necrosword. Professional thief, you said. So why chase a dangerous artifact across dimensions?" Felicia was quiet for several steps. Let's just say I've seen what powerful objects in the wrong hands can do. Sometimes stealing isn't about profit. They reached Naruto's apartment building, climbing the exterior stairs to the third floor. His apartment was modest, one bedroom, a small living area with a kitchenette, and a bathroom. Clean but cluttered with scrolls, ninja tools, and the occasional empty ramen cup he'd missed when cleaning. "Home sweet home," he said, slightly embarrassed by the simplicity. Felicia took it in with a quick glance. "Cozy. Reminds me of my first apartment in New York." "You can take the bed," Naruto offered. "I'll sleep on the couch." Such a gentleman, she teased, but her tone was appreciative rather than mocking. As Naruto gathered spare blankets for the couch, he felt the symbiote stir within him, responding to his fatigue. The day's events, bonding with the symbiote, fighting the cultists, the revelations about Knull, all caught up with him at once, leaving him exhausted. "We should both get some rest," he suggested. "Tomorrow's going to be complicated." Felicia nodded, already heading toward the bedroom. She paused at the door, looking back over her shoulder. "Naruto. Thanks. For not treating me like an enemy." "You fought beside me," he replied simply. "That counts for something where I come from." A genuine smile touched her lips. "In any dimension, really." She disappeared into the bedroom, closing the door softly behind her. Alone in the living room, Naruto settled onto the couch and closed his eyes, entering his mindscape to check on Kurama. The great fox lay curled in his usual position, 9 tails swishing slowly. Across from him, separated by an invisible boundary, writhed the darkness of the symbiote, occasionally forming shapes that resembled faces or claws before dissolving again. "How are you holding up?" Naruto asked the fox. Kurama opened one massive eye. "This parasite is powerful, but contained for now. It recognizes your will as dominant, for the moment." "And the sword?" "The Necrosword? Merged completely with the symbiote. They are one and the same, the weapon is merely another expression of its power." Kurama's eye shifted to the darkness across the mindscape. "Be wary, Naruto. It hungers for battle. For blood." "I know. I can feel it." Naruto sat cross-legged before Kurama. "But there's knowledge in it too. History. So much history." "The memories of a god," Kurama rumbled. "Dangerous things." Naruto nodded, rising to leave. "We'll figure this out. Together. Like always." As he withdrew from his mindscape and drifted toward sleep, fragments of Knull's memories flickered through his dreams: a void before creation, the first light, the forging of the Necrosword from living darkness, and an endless hatred for gods and light. And beneath it all, a hunger that terrified even Kurama, the hunger to return, to reclaim, to consume all in darkness once more. Morning came too quickly, sunlight streaming through windows Naruto had forgotten to cover. He sat up with a groan, feeling strangely energized despite the minimal sleep. The symbiote, he realized, had been actively repairing his body throughout the night, optimizing his muscles and enhancing his senses. The smell of coffee reached him, surprisingly good coffee, not the instant stuff he kept in his cupboard. He followed the aroma to find Felicia in his kitchen, dressed in borrowed clothes, from the look of it, brewing coffee in a makeshift setup she'd apparently created from his limited supplies. "Morning, sunshine," she greeted him without turning around. "Your coffee situation was tragic, so I improvised." Naruto blinked, impressed despite himself. "Where did you even get real coffee beans?" "I have my ways." She handed him a mug, finally turning to face him. Without her mask and in the morning light, her features were softer, though no less striking. "Sleep well?" "Strange dreams," he admitted, taking a sip. The coffee was indeed excellent. "You?" "Well enough, considering I'm in an alternate dimension with cultists after me." She leaned against the counter, studying him. "Your eyes are different." Naruto moved to the small mirror by the door. His reflection showed his normal blue eyes, but now with flecks of red and black swimming in the irises, subtle enough to miss unless you were looking closely. Side effect of the bond, he guessed. I can feel it, settling in. Adapting to me, and me to it. Felicia nodded. That's how it works. The longer you're bonded, the more complete the integration becomes. She hesitated. Eventually, it'll be hard to tell where you end and it begins. Before Naruto could respond, a sharp knock came at the door. Sakura stood outside, medical bag in hand. Morning checkup, she announced, brushing past Naruto into the apartment. She nodded curtly to Felicia. I need to examine him. Privately. Felicia raised her hands in mock surrender. I'll wait on the balcony. She took her coffee and slipped outside through the sliding door, though Naruto noticed she positioned herself where she could still watch through the glass. Sakura began her examination, checking Naruto's vitals, chakra flow, and physical responses. Throughout the process, he could feel the symbiote's discomfort, though it remained passive beneath his skin. Your chakra network has changed, Sakura eventually said, frowning at her diagnostic jutsu results. It's like the pathways have been reinforced. And your cellular regeneration rate is off the charts. Is that bad? Naruto asked. Sakura shook her head slowly. Not bad, just different. Your body is adapting to the symbiote's presence, integrating it into your systems. She glanced toward the balcony where Felicia watched. I don't trust her, Naruto. She knows more than she's telling us. Probably, Naruto admitted. But she's our only source of information about this thing. And she did help me against those cultists. Just be careful. We know nothing about her world or her motives. Sakura packed up her equipment. I want to see you again tomorrow. Any changes, anything at all, you come find me immediately. Understood? After Sakura left, Felicia rejoined him inside. She doesn't like me much. Sakura's protective, Naruto explained. Always has been. More than just a teammate, I'm guessing. Naruto shook his head. It's complicated. We've been through a lot together. He changed the subject. We should head to the intelligence division. Kakashi wants us to brief them on the cult. As they prepared to leave, Naruto felt a sudden, overwhelming urge to shape the symbiote into something. Without consciously deciding to, he extended his hand, allowing darkness to flow from his palm, solidifying into a perfect replica of a kunai knife. Whoa, he whispered, testing the weight of the construct. It was lighter than metal but seemingly just as strong. Felicia watched with interest. Weapon creation. One of the symbiote's abilities, enhanced by the Necrosword. You're learning fast. Naruto dissolved the kunai back into his body. It's like it wants to be used. To fight. That's its nature, Felicia confirmed. Symbiotes are warriors, and Knull's essence especially so. It was born in battle, forged as a weapon. They left the apartment, making their way through morning crowds toward the intelligence division headquarters. As they walked, Naruto noticed his enhanced senses picking up details he'd never noticed before, conversations from a block away, the heartbeats of people they passed, sense carrying stories of where people had been and what they'd done. It's overwhelming at first, Felicia said quietly, noticing his distraction. The sensory enhancement. You'll learn to filter it. How do you know so much about symbiotes? She hesitated. Let's just say they're not uncommon where I come from. Some heroes, some villains, wear them like living suits. The most famous is probably Venom, started as Spider-Man's black costume, became one of his greatest enemies, then an anti-hero in his own right. Spider-Man? Felicia smiled, something wistful in her expression. A hero from my world. Shoots webs, crawls walls, has the proportional strength of a spider. You know him well. We have history. She replied cryptically. Complicated history. At the intelligence division, they were met by Shikamaru Nara, whose sharp eyes immediately noticed the subtle changes in Naruto. As always, he said nothing, simply leading them to a secure briefing room where several intelligence operatives waited. For the next few hours, they detailed everything they knew about the Abyss cult, their origin as worshippers of Knull and Felicia's dimension, their apparent ability to travel between worlds, and their goal of resurrecting their god through Naruto. Based on what we observed, Naruto concluded, they're using some combination of symbiote matter and chakra techniques. Their leader was definitely channeling something similar to what I can access now. Shikamaru, who had remained silent throughout most of the briefing, finally spoke. So we're dealing with dimensional travelers with powers we barely understand, who worship a god of darkness currently trying to possess Naruto. Troublesome doesn't begin to cover it. They'll be regrouping, Felicia added. The loss of their leader will set them back, but not for long. Cults like this always have contingencies. We need to find them before they find us, Shikamaru agreed. I'll coordinate with the sensor division to scan for unusual chakra signatures that might match what you described. As the meeting concluded, Naruto felt a sudden spike of awareness from the symbiote, a warning. Something was approaching. Something familiar. Get down, he shouted, tackling Felicia to the floor just as the wall exploded inward. Through the dust and debris stepped the cult leader they'd thought defeated, his body now almost entirely covered in symbiote matter. Only half his face remained human, twisted in a fanatical grin. The king of the abyss calls to his vessel, he intoned, voice overlaid with an inhuman resonance. Your resistance is futile, Uzumaki Naruto. Knull will rise again. Intelligence operatives moved to intercept, but tentacles of darkness whipped out from the cultist's body, impaling two of them before anyone could react. Shikamaru's shadow possession jutsu shot forward, attempting to immobilize the attacker, but the symbiote matter simply flowed around the shadow connection, rendering it ineffective. Normal techniques won't work, Felicia called, rolling to her feet. His symbiote has evolved. Naruto felt the darkness within him surge in response to the threat, eager for release. This time, he didn't fight it. He allowed the transformation, but guided it with his will and Kurama's chakra, shaping it into something that was neither purely symbiote nor purely bijou mode. His body covered in crimson and black armor, a mane of tendrils flowing from his head and shoulders, Naruto faced the cultist. You want Knull? You'll have to go through me first. And I'm not giving up my body to anyone. Then we will take it, the cultist snarled, launching himself forward with inhuman speed. The battle erupted in the confined space of the intelligence division, walls cracking under the force of their blows. Naruto quickly realized they needed to move this fight elsewhere before they destroyed the building and endangered more lives. Felicia. Shikamaru. Get everyone out, he shouted, grappling with the cultist. I'll move this outside. With a massive surge of strength, Naruto crashed through the ceiling, taking the cultist with him. They burst into open air above Konoha, symbiote constructs forming wings that carried them higher still. Below, villagers pointed skyward at the spectacle, their hero, transformed into something both terrible and magnificent, locked in aerial combat with a creature of living darkness. The cultist formed blades from his arms, slashing at Naruto with frenzied attacks. Your body belongs to Knull. Surrender to his glory. I already share my body with one powerful entity, Naruto growled, forming his own weapons to counter. And he doesn't like roommates he didn't choose. Inside his mindscape, Kurama had risen to his full height, 9 tails lashing as he channeled his chakra to Naruto. The symbiote, sensing the fox's power, responded by amplifying it rather than resisting, their temporary alliance growing stronger through combat. Naruto felt power unlike anything he'd experienced before. The symbiote enhanced his already formidable abilities to godlike levels. He moved faster than the eye could follow, struck harder than he ever had, and found himself instinctively using the symbiote to form weapons, shields, and appendages as needed. The cultist, for all his symbiote enhancement, couldn't match Naruto's raw power. With each exchange, he weakened, his movements growing desperate. You cannot stop what is coming, the cultist gasped after a particularly devastating blow. The confluence approaches. Two worlds merging. Knull's domain extending. What confluence? Naruto demanded, pinning the cultist against the side of a water tower. What are you planning? The cultist laughed, blood and symbiote matter dripping from his mouth. Not planning. Observing. The barriers between worlds thin where gods walk. Your power calls to others, greater powers that hunger for what you now possess. Before Naruto could press further, he sensed movement behind him. He spun, symbiote tendrils forming a shield just in time to block a barrage of kunai. 5 more cultists had appeared on nearby rooftops, each partially transformed with symbiote matter. The momentary distraction cost him. The leader broke free, leaping to join his comrades. Together, they began a synchronous chant, their symbiotes resonating with each other to create a pulsing field of darkness. Naruto prepared to attack again when Felicia appeared beside him, having scaled the water tower with remarkable speed. Wait, she cautioned, grabbing his arm. They're creating a dimensional rift. Attack now and you could destabilize it completely. Isn't that what we want? Not if it tears open a permanent gateway between our worlds. She pointed to the swirling darkness forming above the cultists. That's how they brought the Necrosword here in the first place. The rift expanded, crackling with energy that was neither chakra nor symbiote power but something between, a hybrid force that distorted reality itself. Through the growing portal, Naruto glimpsed another world, a cityscape of towering buildings, flying vehicles, and impossible architecture. My world, Felicia whispered. They're opening a direct path to Earth. The cult leader turned to them, arms spread wide. Behold the beginning of the end. 2 worlds, merged under Knull's domain. The strongest of each realm, vessels for his glory. Naruto felt the symbiote within him respond to the rift, drawn to its home dimension. The pull was almost physical, tugging at the substance bonded to his cells. Kurama growled in alarm as the symbiote's movement threatened to tear away portions of Naruto's chakra network with it. It's trying to return, Naruto gasped, fighting to maintain control. The rift is calling it back. Felicia's eyes widened. We need to close that portal now, or it'll rip the symbiote out of you, along with half your life force from the sound of it. Naruto nodded, focusing his will on the symbiote, reinforcing their bond. I've got an idea, but it's risky. Those are the only kind worth trying, Felicia replied with a grim smile. Naruto created a shadow clone beside him, but this one was different. While his original body maintained the crimson and black symbiote form, the clone manifested pure orange chakra, Kurama's influence dominant. Separate the energies, he explained to Felicia. Then recombine them where it counts. Understanding dawned in her eyes. Chakra to counter chakra, symbiote to counter symbiote. Exactly. The clone leapt toward the cultists from one direction while Naruto circled around, approaching the rift from the opposite side. The cultists, confused by the dual attack, split their attention, exactly as planned. The clone engaged 3 cultists directly, pure Bijou chakra burning away their symbiote enhancements on contact. Meanwhile, Naruto focused on the rift itself and the remaining cultists maintaining it. Your god isn't coming back today, Naruto called, forming a Rasengan in his palm, but unlike any he'd created before. This one contained a swirling mixture of Bijou chakra from his connection to the clone and symbiote matter under his direct control. The 2 forces should have annihilated each other, but Naruto's will held them in perfect, precarious balance. The cult leader recognized the danger too late. No. You'll destroy everything. Naruto drove the combined energy Rasengan directly into the center of the rift. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The unstable mixture of opposing forces created a feedback loop, symbiote energy canceling the symbiote portion of the rift while chakra neutralized the chakra component. The rift collapsed in on itself with a thunderous implosion, releasing a shockwave that knocked everyone back. Naruto's clone dissipated in the blast, returning its chakra to him. The cultists, their connection to the rift severed, fell unconscious as their symbiotes went dormant from the energy backlash. Silence fell over the rooftops of Konoha. Naruto, exhausted from the immense chakra expenditure, allowed the symbiote to reseed beneath his skin. He sat heavily on the roof tiles, breathing hard. Felicia approached cautiously, eyeing the unconscious cultists. That was impressive. Naruto managed a tired grin. Just figuring things out as I go. Story of my life. She sat beside him, surprising him by leaning her shoulder against his. The portal's closed, but they'll try again. The cult exists in both our worlds, with followers on both sides working toward the same goal. Then we'll stop them again, Naruto said simply. Together. Felicia turned to look at him directly. Something had changed in her expression, a newfound respect, perhaps, or something more complex. You know, in my world, I've seen a lot of people get powers they didn't ask for. Most of them either break under the pressure or let it corrupt them. She nodded toward his chest, where the symbiote lay dormant beneath his skin. You're handling it better than most. I've had practice, Naruto replied, thinking of his lifelong journey with Kurama. And good friends to keep me grounded. ANBU operatives appeared around them, securing the unconscious cultists. Shikamaru arrived moments later, surveying the aftermath with his usual calculating gaze. The Hokage wants to see both of you, he informed them. Immediately. In Kakashi's office, the atmosphere was tense. Reports of the battle had spread throughout the village, along with sightings of Naruto's transformed state. The council was demanding explanations, and citizens were understandably frightened. You closed the rift, Kakashi stated after hearing their account. But at the cost of revealing this power publicly. We can't put that genie back in the bottle. I didn't have much choice, Naruto pointed out. I know. Kakashi sighed, leaning back in his chair. But we need to address this. The village needs to understand that you're still you, just with additional abilities. A press conference? Naruto groaned. You know I'm terrible at those. Not a press conference. A demonstration. Kakashi looked out his window toward the training grounds. Show them that this power is under your control. That it's an asset, not a threat. Like when I first showed everyone I could control Kurama's chakra, Naruto realized. Kakashi nodded. Exactly. And in the meantime, our intelligence teams will interrogate the cultists we've captured. Perhaps they can provide more information about this confluence they mentioned. It's a real threat, Felicia interjected. If they succeeded in creating even a temporary bridge between our worlds, they can do it again, and bigger next time. Then we prepare, Kakashi decided. Naruto, you'll work with Felicia to master these new abilities. Consider it your primary mission until further notice. As they left the Hokage Tower, the afternoon sun hung low in the sky. Villagers on the street stopped to stare at Naruto, whispering behind their hands. News traveled fast in a ninja village. Fame has its downsides, Felicia observed. They'll come around, Naruto said with more confidence than he felt. They always do, eventually. They walked in comfortable silence toward Naruto's apartment, both lost in thought. The day's events had changed things, not just for Naruto and his relationship with the symbiote, but between him and Felicia as well. Fighting side by side forged bonds that conversation alone couldn't create. At his apartment door, Naruto hesitated. You know, we never really figured out if there's a way to send you back to your world. Felicia leaned against the doorframe, studying him with those piercing green eyes. Would you miss me if I left? The question caught him off guard with its directness. Naruto found himself answering honestly before he could think better of it. Yeah. I would. A smile curved her lips. Good answer. She pushed off the doorframe, brushing past him to enter the apartment. Besides, I'm not going anywhere until we deal with this cult situation. professional pride and all that. Inside, as evening shadows lengthened across the floor, Naruto felt the symbiote stir within him. Not with aggression or hunger this time, but with something almost like contentment. Kurama, too, seemed more at peace with the arrangement than before. "We're adapting to each other," Naruto observed in his mindscape, watching the boundaries between Fox and symbiote blur slightly at the edges. "Necessity," Kurama rumbled. "But yes, an understanding has been reached." The symbiote, limited in its ability to communicate directly, pulsed with what Naruto interpreted as agreement. Three distinct beings, sharing one body, finding balance through shared purpose. In the physical world, Naruto opened his eyes to find Felicia watching him curiously. "Talking to your tenants?" she asked. He nodded. "They're getting along better. The fight helped, I think. Nothing brings people together like a common enemy." Felicia stretched like her namesake, cat-like and graceful. "So, what's the plan for tomorrow? More cult hunting? Symbiote training? Impressing the locals with your new powers?" "All of the above," Naruto replied with a grin. "But first, food. I'm starving." "Let me guess, ramen." His surprise must have shown on his face because she laughed. "Your cupboards are full of instant ramen cups, and there's a punch card for a place called Ichiraku's on your refrigerator," she explained. "I'm a thief, remember? Observation is my specialty." "Ichiraku's it is," then, Naruto decided. "Best ramen in any dimension. Guaranteed." As they headed out into the evening, Naruto felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time, the thrill of the unknown. New powers, new threats, new allies, and perhaps something more developing with the mysterious woman from another world. The symbiote hummed beneath his skin, Kurama watched with amused interest, and Naruto Uzumaki, ninja of the hidden leaf, Jinchuriki of the nine-tailed fox, and now vessel of Knull's legacy, stepped forward into whatever awaited them next. The Abyss cult was still out there. The confluence, whatever it was, still threatened. But for the first time since touching the Necrosword, Naruto felt not just powerful, but balanced, darkness and light, chaos and order, all flowing through him in harmony. And beside him walked Felicia Hardy, a woman who had crossed dimensions to stop a threat and found herself fighting alongside a ninja with the power of a god. Her quick wit and quicker reflexes complemented his straightforward strength and determination, creating a partnership neither could have anticipated but both were beginning to value. "You know," Felicia remarked as they walked through the lantern-lit streets, "in my experience, the best stories start with someone finding something they shouldn't." Naruto laughed. "Like a sword that contains the essence of an evil god?" "Exactly like that." Her smile held a hint of mischief. "Though I usually deal with stolen jewels and priceless artifacts, not world-ending dark entities." "Well, there's a first time for everything." As they disappeared into the evening crowd, neither noticed the shadowy figure watching from a nearby rooftop, a figure whose eyes gleamed with intelligence far beyond that of the cultists they defeated. Moriarty, dimensional traveler and manipulator of worlds, smiled thinly as he observed his pawns moving precisely as anticipated. "The vessel bonds with the shadow," he murmured. "The catalyst walks between worlds. All proceeds as calculated." He turned away, vanishing into darkness of his own making. Let them think they've won this skirmish. The war for the confluence has barely begun. Chapter 2, Darkness and Light. The morning sun hadn't yet crested the horizon when Naruto found himself standing in Training Ground 3, the familiar wooden posts and surrounding trees still shrouded in pre-dawn shadows. Dew clung to grass beneath his feet as he closed his eyes, focusing on the dual energies within him. "Let it flow naturally," Felicia's voice came from where she perched on a nearby post. "Don't force it or fight it." "Easier said than done," Naruto muttered, feeling the symbiote stir beneath his skin. It wanted out, wanted to spread, to consume, to fight. Kurama's chakra pulsed in counterpoint, creating an internal rhythm that Naruto was still learning to navigate. 3 days had passed since their battle with the Abyss cult and the closure of the dimensional rift. 3 days of intense training as Naruto struggled to master his new abilities. 3 days of increasingly comfortable companionship with Felicia Hardy. The symbiote responds to emotion, Felicia explained, hopping down from the post to circle him. Anger, fear, excitement, they trigger it. But so does focus and intention. You need to find the balance. Naruto nodded, extending his arm. He allowed the symbiote to flow outward, coating his hand and forearm in rippling darkness. Unlike his first transformations, which had been reactive and chaotic, this was controlled, deliberate. Good, Felicia encouraged. Now shape it. Imagine what you want it to become. The darkness stretched and solidified, forming a wicked-looking blade extending from Naruto's forearm. He examined it with a mixture of fascination and wariness. It's getting easier, he admitted. Less like fighting for control, more like guiding it. That's how it should be. A partnership. Felicia pulled a kunai from her borrowed ninja pouch and assumed a fighting stance. Now let's see how well you can maintain that control under pressure. She launched forward without warning, blade flashing toward his chest. Naruto parried instinctively, symbiote blade meeting metal with a strange resonating sound. The impact sent vibrations through the living weapon and up his arm, not painful, but intense, like feedback through his nervous system. The symbiote enhances your reaction time, Felicia noted, breaking away and circling for another attack. It can sense danger before you consciously register it. She demonstrated by throwing 3 shurikens simultaneously from different angles. Before Naruto could even think to dodge, the symbiote had already formed a shield, blocking all 3 projectiles. Whoa, Naruto breathed, examining the shield that had erupted from his forearm. That wasn't me. It was and it wasn't, Felicia replied, retrieving her weapons. The symbiote wants to protect its host, you, but it's using your subconscious reactions to guide its responses. You sensed the danger faster than you could consciously respond, and it acted on that impulse. Inside his mindscape, Kurama rumbled with grudging approval. The parasite has its uses. The symbiote, sensing Kurama's acknowledgement, pulsed with what Naruto was learning to interpret as satisfaction. The 2 entities were developing an uneasy coexistence within him, their mutual protection of their host serving as common ground. Try offensive shaping now, Felicia suggested. Multiple forms, rapid transitions. Naruto focused, allowing the symbiote to spread further. Black tendrils wrapped around both arms, solidifying into blades, then morphing into hammers, then whips that cracked the air with practiced precision. With each transformation, the process became smoother, requiring less conscious effort. You're a natural, Felicia observed, watching him cycle through weapon forms. Most new hosts take weeks to achieve this level of control. I've had practice sharing my body, Naruto reminded her, allowing the symbiote to retract back beneath his skin. Only his eyes retained evidence of the bond, blue irises ringed with crimson against black sclera. Kurama and I didn't exactly start as friends either. Felicia smiled, wiping sweat from her brow. Despite the early hour, their training had been intense. Your fox friend seems to be warming up to the arrangement. He sees the tactical advantages, Naruto said, then grinned. Plus, I think he enjoys having another powerful entity to argue with. Gets boring only having me to talk to. Inside, Kurama snorted. Don't flatter yourself. Naruto laughed at the fox's indignation, earning a curious look from Felicia. Sorry, he explained. Kurama just called me annoying, in his own special way. I'm still trying to wrap my head around that, Felicia admitted, sitting on the ground and stretching her legs. You've got 2 separate entities living inside you, and now they're what, roommates? Frenemies? Naruto sat beside her, plucking a blade of grass to twirl between his fingers. Something like that. They've established boundaries in my mindscape, their own territories. But they're starting to cooperate more, especially in combat situations. Smart survival strategy. Felicia leaned back on her palms, face tilted toward the rising sun. So what's next in our training regimen, Sensei? Naruto was about to suggest aerial maneuvers using the symbiote to form wings when a flash of movement caught his eye. Shikamaru Nara emerged from the tree line, his usual bored expression replaced by something more urgent. Kakashi needs you, he called without preamble. Intelligence Division. Now. Naruto was on his feet instantly, offering a hand to pull Felicia up. What happened? Our scouts found something. Multiple somethings, actually. Shikamaru's eyes darted to Felicia, then back to Naruto. Cult activity across all 5 nations, simultaneously. Coordinated. The Abyss Cult? Felicia asked, already moving alongside them as they headed toward the village. Shikamaru nodded grimly. The ones we captured gave us nothing useful during interrogation, literally nothing. Their minds were wiped somehow. But their tattoos match patterns we've now identified in reported disturbances across the continent. As they raced through the village streets, still quiet in the early morning hours, Naruto felt the symbiote responding to his rising concern, coiling with anticipation beneath his skin. They're planning something bigger than just bringing Knull back, aren't they? He asked. That's what we need to find out, Shikamaru replied. The Intelligence Division headquarters buzzed with activity despite the early hour. Analysts pored over maps and reports while communications teams coordinated with outposts in distant regions. In the center of the main operations room, Kakashi stood with Shizune and several ANBU captains, expressions grave as they studied a large digital display. Naruto, Felicia, Kakashi greeted them without looking up. We have a situation. The display showed a map of the 5 great nations, with red markers indicating disturbances. Dozens of them, forming a pattern that was immediately familiar to Naruto, a spiral with a dragon-like symbol at its center. Knull's sigil, Felicia whispered, stepping closer to the map. They're creating a massive version of it across your entire continent. Not just marking it, Shizune added, pulling up additional data. Each location shows evidence of ritual activity. Blood sacrifices, energy manipulations, and these strange structures. The display changed to show images from various sites, stone altars surrounded by black crystalline formations that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. Naruto recognized them immediately. Those are like the altar where I found the Necrosword, he said. They're conduits. For what? Kakashi asked. Felicia and Naruto exchanged glances. The confluence, they said simultaneously. What we saw during the rift incident wasn't the main event, Felicia explained. It was a test run. These altars, they're creating a network, linking specific points of power across your world. And once the network is complete, Naruto continued, understanding dawning, they can attempt a full-scale merging of dimensions. Kakashi absorbed this information with characteristic composure, though the tension in his shoulders betrayed his concern. How do we stop it? We disrupt the network, Felicia said. Destroy the altars, break the pattern. We've already dispatched teams to the locations we've identified, Shikamaru interjected. But there are too many to cover them all quickly, and we're still discovering new sites. We need to find the central node, Naruto realized. The control point for the entire network. Take that out, and the rest becomes useless. The dragon head in the symbol, Felicia agreed, pointing to the map. That would be the focal point. The brain of the operation. Shikamaru zoomed in on that region, a remote area in the mountains between the land of fire and the land of sound. Our intelligence suggests heavy cult activity there, but no team has been able to get close enough for confirmation. The entire region is shrouded in some kind of barrier that disrupts chakra sensing and communication. Sounds like our target, Naruto said, already mentally preparing for the mission. When do we leave? Immediately, Kakashi decided. But not alone. I'm assigning a full squad to accompany you. With all due respect, Hokage, Felicia cut in, a large group would be detected too easily. This needs stealth and speed, not force. Kakashi studied her for a moment. You seem to have experience with this sort of infiltration. A smile played at the corner of Felicia's mouth. Let's just say breaking into heavily guarded locations is something of a specialty. Two-person team, then, Kakashi conceded. But I want regular check-ins, and if you encounter resistance beyond your capabilities, call for backup, Naruto finished for him. We know the drill. As they left to prepare for the mission, Shikamaru fell into step beside them. One more thing, he said quietly. The interrogation team found something strange in the cultists' blood work. Traces of a substance we can't identify, some kind of synthetic compound that enhances neural connectivity between hosts. Someone's upgrading them, Felicia murmured. That's not standard symbiote behavior. The question is who, Naruto said. And why? An hour later, they were moving through the forests north of Konoha, traveling at high speed toward the mountain region. Naruto had opted for a modified version of his standard gear, while Felicia wore a black bodysuit adapted from her own costume, reinforced with lightweight shinobi armor. So back in your world, Naruto asked as they leapt from branch to branch, you're a professional thief. Felicia laughed, matching his pace effortlessly. Among other things. The black cat walks the line between hero and criminal, depending on who's telling the story. And which side do you think you're on? My own, she replied without hesitation. I learned early that labels like hero and villain are just boxes people try to put you in. I prefer to stay unboxed. Naruto considered this as they continued their journey. Must be lonely sometimes. She glanced at him, surprise flickering across her features before her usual confident expression returned. Freedom always comes with a price. I'm used to it. They traveled in silence for a while, pushing their pace as the terrain grew steeper. By midday, they'd reached the foothills of the mountain range, stopping briefly to consult the map Shikamaru had provided. The barrier should begin about 2 kilometers ahead, Naruto said, studying the topographical markers. Once we're inside, communications will be cut off. Felicia nodded, taking a drink from her water canteen. What's the plan? Frontal assault or sneaky? Reconnaissance first, Naruto decided. I can send shadow clones to scout while we approach more cautiously. Smart move, she agreed. My world's heroes could learn a thing or two about not charging blindly into situations. Naruto formed the hand sign, creating 10 shadow clones that immediately spread out, moving ahead to scout different approaches to the barrier. As he watched them go, he felt the symbiote shift beneath his skin, responding to the division of his chakra. It doesn't like when you split your energy, Felicia observed. No, Naruto confirmed. Makes it feel, stretched thin, I think. But it's adapting. They continued their approach more slowly now, moving from cover to cover as the landscape changed from dense forest to rocky terrain with sparse vegetation. The air grew noticeably cooler and carried a strange metallic taste that made the symbiote writhe uncomiously beneath Naruto's skin. Something's not right, he murmured, pausing behind a large boulder. The symbiote is agitated. Felicia crouched beside him, green eyes scanning the path ahead. It can sense others of its kind. How many clones have you lost? Naruto concentrated for a moment, taking inventory of his shadow clone status. 3. They encountered resistance at the barrier edge. Even as he spoke, he received a sudden influx of memories as 2 more clones were destroyed. The images that flashed through his mind made him stiffen, humanoid creatures covered in black symbiote matter, but with grotesque modifications. Metal components protruded from their bodies, and glowing seals were carved directly into the symbiote material. They've merged shinobi with symbiotes, he reported grimly. And added some kind of tech to control them. That's not possible, Felicia whispered, eyes widening. Symbiotes can't be controlled by external technology, they reject it, consume it. Well, someone figured out how to make it work. Naruto pointed to the rocky ridge ahead. The remaining clones found an unguarded approach. If we move now, we might slip through before they detect the disruption. They darted from their hiding place, moving swiftly and silently across the exposed terrain. As they approached the invisible barrier, Naruto felt resistance, like pushing through thick syrup, but no alarm was triggered. Within moments, they were through, the air on the other side heavy with chakra and something else, the unmistakable presence of symbiote matter. "We're in," Naruto murmured. The valley beyond the barrier revealed the full scope of the cult's operation. What had once been natural landscape had been transformed into a massive ritual site. The valley floor was carved with intricate patterns that channeled dark energy between larger structures, black obelisks that pulsed with power. At the center stood a temple complex that could have housed hundreds. "That's bigger than we expected," Felicia said, voice hushed as they observed from their position on the ridge. Naruto nodded, taking in the scale of the operation. "This isn't some splinter cult. This is an army." They watched as black-robed figures moved between structures, carrying materials or performing synchronized movements that seemed part ritual, part training exercise. Interspersed among them were the symbiote hybrid guards, faster, stronger, and clearly serving as enforcers. "We need to get closer to the central temple," Naruto decided. "That's where the control mechanism will be." Felicia pointed to a ravine that curved around the eastern edge of the complex. "That looks like our best approach. Shadows all the way, minimal exposure." Using every stealth technique at his disposal, Naruto led them down into the ravine. The symbiote helped, adapting his coloration to blend with the surroundings, a camouflage ability he hadn't known it possessed. Felicia moved with the silent grace that made her namesake appropriate, her body seeming to flow from shadow to shadow. As they drew closer to the temple complex, the concentration of dark energy intensified. Naruto could feel it resonating with the symbiote inside him, calling to it. Kurama growled in warning, using his chakra to create a buffer against the external influence. "Their rituals are feeding power to those obelisks," Felicia whispered as they paused behind a storage structure. "Building up energy for whatever comes next." "Look there," Naruto pointed to a larger building adjacent to the main temple. Unlike the other structures, this one appeared more modern, metal and glass rather than stone, with equipment visible through the windows. "That doesn't match the rest of this place." "A laboratory," Felicia confirmed, eyes narrowing. "Someone's bringing science to the symbiote party." They made their way toward the lab building, timing their movements between patrol rotations. Up close, the contrast was even more striking. Cutting-edge technology housed in what amounted to a modern research facility, dropped into the middle of an ancient ritual site. They found an access point, a ventilation shaft large enough to crawl through, and slipped inside. The interior was clinically white, a stark contrast to the black stone structures outside. Workstations lined the walls, each displaying data and diagrams that Naruto couldn't begin to comprehend. "This is advanced tech," Felicia whispered, examining one of the displays. "More advanced than anything in my world, and we have some pretty fancy toys. Can you make sense of any of it?" She shook her head, moving to another station. "Not the details, but the general thrust seems to be symbiote manipulation and enhancement. They're studying ways to stabilize the bond between symbiotes and hosts while maintaining external control." The center of the lab contained a circular platform surrounded by equipment. On the platform stood 5 cylindrical tanks, each containing what appeared to be a human suspended in black fluid. Tubes and wires connected the tanks to a central console. "Test subjects," Naruto murmured, approaching cautiously. The symbiote within him reacted strongly to the sight, tendrils emerging from his skin before he could control them, reaching toward the tanks as if drawn by invisible force. "Naruto," Felicia warned, moving to his side. "Your symbiote is responding to whatever's in those tanks. Pull it back before it triggers alarms." With effort, Naruto reined in the symbiote, forcing it back beneath his skin. "Sorry. It just jumped out." "They're using refined symbiote essence," Felicia said, examining the tanks more closely. Purified and synthesized. That shouldn't be possible without. The door to the lab slid open, cutting off her observation. They ducked behind the central console as footsteps approached, a single set, unhurried and confident. Progress report, a cultured voice commanded, addressing the empty room. A holographic display activated in response, showing statistics and charts. Excellent. Subjects 3 and 4 are showing the highest compatibility ratings. Accelerate their processing and prepare them for field testing. Naruto risked a glance around the edge of the console. The speaker stood with his back to them, a tall, slender man in an impeccable suit, not cult robes. His dark hair was streaked with silver at the temples, and he carried himself with unmistakable authority. That's not a cultist, Felicia breathed in his ear. That's something else entirely. The man turned slightly, revealing a refined profile and calculating eyes that swept the laboratory as if searching for imperfections. Computer, activate security protocol Sigma 9. I sense we have visitors. Red lights flashed as alarms blared. Metal shutters slammed down over doors and vents, sealing the laboratory. The man turned fully, looking directly at their hiding place with a smile that never reached his eyes. Please, don't skulk about like common thieves, he called. It's beneath us all. Come out and let's converse like civilized beings. Naruto and Felicia exchanged glances. Their cover blown, they rose slowly, ready for immediate combat if necessary. Fascinating, the man said, studying them with clinical interest. The Necrosword's chosen vessel and the interdimensional thief. I've been expecting you, though perhaps not quite this soon. You've disrupted my timetable by approximately 14 hours. Who are you? Naruto demanded, feeling the symbiote roil beneath his skin, responding to the threat. Ah, introductions. How quaint. The man gave a slight bow. Professor James Moriarty, at your service. Though in this particular universe, professor is perhaps less accurate than architect. Moriarty. Felicia tensed beside Naruto. As in the criminal mastermind from Sherlock Holmes. The man's smile widened fractionally. Literary namesake only, I assure you, though I admit to a certain kinship with the character's intellectual approach to problem solving. In your dimension, Ms. Hardy, I'm known in certain circles as the Calculator, a designer of systems that bridge realities. Naruto felt Kurama's chakra surge protectively as the symbiote reacted to Moriarty's presence. Something about the man felt wrong, as if he existed slightly out of sync with the world around him. You're behind all this, Naruto realized. The cult, the symbiote experiments, the confluence. Behind it? No, no. Moriarty walked casually around the laboratory, touching equipment with proprietary familiarity. I'm merely facilitating natural cosmic evolution. The barriers between dimensions have always been permeable to those with sufficient knowledge and power. I simply provide the framework. For what purpose? Felicia demanded. Dimensional merging on this scale would cause catastrophic destruction in both worlds. Destruction and creation are two sides of the same process, Ms. Hardy. Moriarty's tone was that of a professor correcting a student. What emerges will be neither your world nor Mr. Uzumaki's, but something transcendent. A perfect fusion of chakra and science, of symbiote and spirit. As he spoke, Naruto noticed subtle movements in the laboratory, panels sliding open in the walls, revealing what looked like weapon systems orienting toward them. The Abyss cult believes they serve Knull, Moriarty continued. And in a sense, they do. But Knull is merely one power among many that will find expression in the new reality. The Otsutsuki, the symbiote gods, the cosmic entities of your dimension, all will have their domains in the mosaic I am creating. You're insane, Felicia stated flatly. Moriarty sighed. Genius is so often mistaken for madness by those of lesser vision. He pressed a button on his wrist device. I had hoped to continue this discussion, but I have a schedule to maintain. Perhaps we can resume our conversation after you've had time to reflect on your position. The weapon systems in the walls fired, not bullets or energy blasts, but canisters that exploded into clouds of black particles that swarmed toward them. Nanites! Felicia shouted, leaping backward. Don't let them touch your symbiote. Naruto formed a Rasengan instantly, the spiraling chakra creating a barrier that repelled the nanite cloud. The symbiote erupted from his skin, forming a protective layer as additional defenses activated throughout the laboratory. We need to get out of here, he called to Felicia, who was using her remarkable agility to avoid mechanical arms that had descended from the ceiling, attempting to capture her. Working on it. She flipped over one of the workstations, grabbing what looked like a small device before smashing it against the wall. The resulting explosion blew a hole in the laboratory's exterior wall, revealing the cult complex. Beyond. Naruto charged toward the opening, creating 3 shadow clones to engage the security systems while he and Felicia escaped. Outside, alarms were already blaring across the complex, cultists and symbiote guards converging on their position. So much for stealth, Naruto muttered, allowing the symbiote to fully envelop him now. The transformation came easier than ever before, crimson and black armor flowing across his body, forming a fearsome visage that combined aspects of Kurama's features with the symbiote's alien aesthetic. Felicia stared at him for a moment. That's new. Improvising, Naruto explained, his voice deeper and resonant through the symbiote mask. He extended a hand to her. Hold on. When she grasped his hand, the symbiote extended tendrils that wrapped around her waist and shoulders, securing her to him. Then Naruto leapt, symbiote forming wing-like structures that carried them into the air above the complex. Below, chaos erupted as cultists fired energy weapons and symbiote guards launched themselves upward, trying to intercept. None came close to reaching their height as Naruto soared toward the barrier at the valley's edge. Moriarty, Felicia said as they flew. He's not what I expected. More scientist than cultist. He's the one upgrading the symbiotes, Naruto confirmed. Using the cult as his workforce while he pursues his own agenda. They cleared the mountain ridge and continued flying until they were well beyond the barrier, landing in a small clearing several kilometers from the cult compound. Naruto released Felicia and allowed the symbiote to partially reseed, though he maintained enough of the transformation to remain battle-ready. We need to report this to Kakashi, he said. The situation is worse than we thought. If Moriarty can create stable symbiote-host hybrids with that level of technological enhancement, he could build an army that combines the worst aspects of both our worlds, Felicia finished. But that's not even what worries me most. What does? He knew me, she said, pacing the clearing with nervous energy. Knew exactly who I was. And he was expecting us. This wasn't a security breach, it was a calculated encounter. Naruto frowned, the symbiote mask receding to reveal his face. You think he wanted us to find him? I think he's 10 steps ahead of us in a game we didn't even know we were playing. Felicia stopped pacing, turning to face him directly. And I think he's not working alone. The tech I saw in that lab, it reminds me of something from my world. Something Alchemax was developing before I left. Alchemax. Megacorporation with their fingers in every technological pie. They were experimenting with symbiotes, trying to weaponize them. She shook her head. But they never achieved anything close to what we just saw. Naruto absorbed this information, mentally reviewing what they'd witnessed. Did you notice the tanks? The subjects inside? Hard to miss. They weren't just random test subjects. They were shinobi, chakra networks fully developed. Naruto's expression darkened. Which means Moriarty has connections inside the ninja world, people supplying him with trained ninja to experiment on. This realization hung between them, implications spiraling outward. If Moriarty had infiltrated the shinobi power structure, nowhere was truly safe. Anyone could be compromised. We need to get back to Konoha, Naruto decided. Now. They traveled at maximum speed, pushing themselves to the limit to cover the distance back to the village. By the time they reached the gates, night had fallen, and both were exhausted from the sustained effort. The village seemed peaceful, unaware of the threat building in the mountains. Guards nodded to Naruto as they passed, recognizing the village hero despite his altered appearance. Nothing seemed amiss, and somehow, that made Naruto more uneasy. "It's too quiet," he murmured as they made their way toward the Hokage Tower. "If Moriarty has infiltrators here, they should be reacting to our return. Unless they want us to report what we saw," Felicia pointed out. "Feed information up the chain to identify who's concerned about it." Naruto considered this, then made a sudden change in direction, pulling Felicia into a side alley. "We're not going to the Hokage Tower," he decided. "Not directly. We need someone we can absolutely trust. And that would be Shikamaru. If anyone can unravel this conspiracy, it's him." They took a circuitous route through the village, avoiding main streets and using rooftops when possible. Naruto extended his senses, the symbiote enhancing his already sharp perception to detect any followers. They reached Shikamaru's modest house on the outskirts of the Nara clan forest without incident. Naruto knocked in a specific pattern, one that Shikamaru would recognize as their private signal from war days. Moments later, the door opened to reveal Shikamaru, expression shifting from sleepy irritation to alert focus when he saw who was calling at this late hour. "Inside," he said simply, stepping back to admit them. Once the door was secured and privacy seals activated, Shikamaru listened intently as they detailed what they discovered at the cult compound. His expression remained impassive, but his fingers formed a familiar triangle, his thinking pose. "Moriarty," he repeated when they finished. "Not a name from any bingo book I know." "He's not from our world," Naruto reminded him. "But he's got connections here, high-level ones, if he's acquiring trained shinobi for experiments." Shikamaru nodded slowly. "The missing Nin reports have increased over the past 6 months. We assumed it was normal post-war shuffling as villages reorganize, but if someone's collecting them." "Not just collecting," Felicia interjected. "Enhancing them with symbiote matter and technology that shouldn't exist in this world. And working toward this confluence," Shikamaru continued, mind clearly mapping connections. "Emerging of dimensions that would remake reality according to his design. That's the endgame," Naruto confirmed. "The question is, who in our world is helping him? We can't go to Kakashi if we don't know who to trust." Shikamaru was quiet for a long moment, eyes closed in concentration. When he opened them, his decision was made. "We keep this circle small. I'll contact Ino and Choji, we can trust my team completely. Sakura too, since she's already involved with monitoring your symbiote situation." "What about Kakashi?" Naruto asked. "We tell him, but carefully. Controlled information until we can identify the leak." Shikamaru stood, already moving to gather equipment. "We need hard evidence of who's working with Moriarty. I'll start cross-referencing missing Nin reports with known cult activities." "And us?" Felicia asked. "You two are the most valuable assets we have right now," Shikamaru said. "Naruto's combination of symbiote and bijou power makes him uniquely equipped to deal with these enhanced cult members. And you, Felicia, understand symbiotes in ways none of us do. So what's the plan?" Naruto pressed. "Tonight, you rest. Both of you are exhausted, and we need you at full strength." Shikamaru's tone brooked no argument. "Tomorrow, we begin our counter-operation. If Moriarty wants to play chess with dimensions, he's about to discover that Konoha has its own grandmaster." Naruto's apartment felt like a sanctuary after the tension of the day. Felicia disappeared into the bathroom for a long shower while Naruto collapsed onto the couch, mentally reviewing everything they'd learned. Inside his mindscape, Kurama was unusually thoughtful, his massive form curled in contemplation rather than his usual lounging posture. "This Moriarty troubles you," Naruto observed. "He is not what he appears," the fox rumbled. "I sensed distortion around him. As if he exists in multiple states simultaneously. What does that mean? I do not know, Kurama admitted. But the symbiote sensed it too. It feared him. This revelation surprised Naruto. The symbiote had shown aggression, hunger, even preference, but fear was new. As if responding to his thoughts, the symbiote essence in his mindscape shifted, forming patterns that somehow communicated agreement with Kurama's assessment. The bathroom door opened, releasing a cloud of steam as Felicia emerged, toweling her platinum hair dry. She'd changed into a t-shirt of Naruto's that hung to mid-thigh, her long legs bare beneath it. "Bathroom's yours," she said, dropping onto the couch beside him. "Though I used most of the hot water." "Sorry, not sorry." Naruto smiled despite his fatigue. "I'll survive." He hesitated, then asked, "Felicia, what did you make of Moriarty?" Beyond the obvious megalomaniac scientist vibe. She considered the question, pulling her legs up under her on the couch. He was too comfortable. Too prepared. And he moved wrong. Moved wrong. Like. She searched for the right words. Like his body was an afterthought. A vessel rather than his actual form. She shuddered slightly. "I've met beings like that before, cosmic entities that use human forms as convenience. They never quite get the details right." This aligned with what Kurama had sensed. So we might be dealing with something beyond a human scientist with dimensional tech. Possibly. Felicia's expression turned serious. "Naruto, whatever he is, Moriarty knows things about me that he shouldn't. Personal things. He looked at me like he'd been watching me for a long time." The vulnerability in her voice struck Naruto deeply. Without thinking, he reached out, covering her hand with his own. "We'll figure this out. Together." She looked at their joined hands, then up at his face. Something shifted in her expression, the careful distance she maintained giving way to something warmer, more open. "You know, in my world, I'm usually the one who walks away first. Keeps things simple. And here?" A smile tugged at her lips. "Nothing about this situation is simple. Dimensional rifts, symbiote gods, cosmic conspirators." Her fingers intertwined with his. "But this? This feels surprisingly uncomplicated." Naruto felt the symbiote react to his quickening pulse, rippling pleasantly beneath his skin. Even Kurama seemed to withdraw deeper into his mindscape, granting a measure of privacy. "Felicia," Naruto began, not entirely sure what he wanted to say. She saved him the trouble by leaning forward, pressing her lips against his in a kiss that started gently but quickly deepened with unexpected intensity. The symbiote responded to his surge of emotion, tendrils emerging to wrap around them both in a cocoon of sensation that amplified every touch. When they finally separated, both slightly breathless, Felicia laughed softly. "Well, that's new. Your little friend seems enthusiastic." "Sorry," Naruto said, embarrassed as he reined in the symbiote. "It responds to emotions. Don't apologize." She traced a finger along his jawline. "It's actually kind of hot, in a weird, tentacly way." Naruto couldn't help but laugh. "I think that's the strangest compliment I've ever received." Her smile faded into something more serious. "Naruto, I don't know what happens after we deal with Moriarty and the cult. I don't know if I'll stay in this world or find a way back to mine. But right now, I don't want to think about tomorrow." "Then we won't," he agreed, pulling her closer. "Just tonight." Morning found them tangled together on Naruto's bed, sunlight streaming through curtains neither had thought to close. Naruto woke first, acutely aware of Felicia's warm presence beside him, her platinum hair spread across his chest where she rested her head. The symbiote felt different somehow, calmer, more integrated with his own consciousness. Inside his mindscape, Kurama pretended disinterest, though Naruto could sense the fox's amusement at the situation. Felicia stirred, green eyes blinking open to meet his. "Morning," she murmured, voice husky from sleep. You're thinking loud enough to wake the dead. Just processing, Naruto admitted. She propped herself up on an elbow, studying his face. Regrets? None. He brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. You. Not about last night. She sat up fully, the sheet pooling around her waist. But we've got a megalomaniac to stop and a cult to dismantle. Busy day ahead. As if on cue, a sharp knock came at the apartment door. Naruto groaned. That'll be Shikamaru. They dressed quickly, Naruto pulling on his standard gear while Felicia donned her modified black cat suit, now repaired and reinforced thanks to Konoha's equipment division. When they opened the door, however, it wasn't Shikamaru who waited but Sakura, expression tense. Emergency meeting, she said without preamble. Intelligence division. Now. What happened? Naruto asked, immediately alert. Attacks at 3 of the 5 Kage residences simultaneously, Sakura reported as they hurried through the village. Symbiote-enhanced assailants with technology beyond anything we've seen before. The Tsuchikage is dead. The Mizukage and Reikage are injured but alive. The Kazekage repelled the attack completely. And Kakashi? Naruto demanded, feeling cold dread settle in his stomach. Unharmed. The attack here was intercepted by ANBU. Sakura glanced at him. But that's not all. The attackers, some were recognized. Missing Nin, who disappeared months ago, now transformed into something else. Exactly as they'd feared from what they'd seen in Moriarty's laboratory. The hybrids, Felicia murmured. He's deployed them already. It's starting, Naruto realized. The final phase of whatever Moriarty is planning. The attacks on the Kage weren't assassination attempts, they were tests. Tests of what? Sakura asked. Of how well his creations perform against the most powerful shinobi in each nation, Felicia explained. And of how the nations will respond to a coordinated threat. They reached the intelligence division to find organized chaos, teams processing reports from across the continent, medical units preparing for potential casualties, and combat squads receiving deployment orders. In the center of it all stood Kakashi with Shikamaru and the other senior advisors, faces grim as they assessed the situation. Naruto, Felicia, Kakashi acknowledged them. Sakura briefed you. Naruto nodded. This is Moriarty's opening move. He started the confluence process. Moriarty? Kakashi's visible eye narrowed. Explain. Quickly, they shared what they'd discovered at the cult compound, Moriarty's laboratory, the symbiote experiments, and his plans for merging dimensions. As they spoke, Shikamaru updated the tactical display, mapping known cult sites against the reported attacks. The pattern is expanding, he noted, pointing to new red markers that had appeared overnight. Each attack site has become a nexus of unusual energy readings. They're building the network faster than we can respond. And we still don't know who's feeding them information from inside our ranks, Kakashi added, voice low enough that only those immediately around him could hear. I might have something on that, Shikamaru said, sliding a folder across the table. Financial transfers between accounts linked to known cult fronts and 3 high-ranking officials across different villages. Including one in Konoha. Kakashi opened the folder, eyes widening slightly before his expression returned to its usual mask of calm. Counselor Shimura Danzo's former subordinate. I should have known. The root connection makes sense, Naruto murmured. They always did favor power over ideology. I've already dispatched ANBU to detain the suspect, Kakashi informed them. But the damage is done. Moriarty has what he needs, strategic information on all 5 villages and their defenses. So what's our counter-strategy? Felicia asked, studying the tactical display. The cult network is too widespread to attack all at once, even with combined forces from all villages. We target the central node, Naruto said, pointing to the mountain region they'd visited. Cut off the head, disrupt the entire system. Kakashi nodded slowly. A surgical strike rather than a dispersed defense. It could work, but the force would need to be small enough to penetrate their defenses yet powerful enough to overcome Moriarty's enhanced guards. "I'll go," Naruto said immediately. "The symbiote gives me an advantage against their forces, and I've been inside the compound before." "Not alone," Felicia stated flatly, crossing her arms. "I'm coming too. I know symbiotes better than anyone here." "I'll assemble a backup team," Shikamaru offered. "Small, elite, ready to deploy if you need extraction." Kakashi considered the options, clearly weighing risks against dwindling time. "Agreed. But you'll need more than just the two of you for the initial insertion. Sakura will accompany you, her medical ninjutsu and combat skills complement your abilities." Naruto glanced at Sakura, who nodded in confirmation. The original Team 7 dynamic plus Felicia, it wasn't what he would have chosen given the complicated emotions involved, but tactically it made sense. "When do we leave?" he asked. "Immediately," Kakashi replied. "Our intelligence suggests that Moriarty's timetable has accelerated. The confluence ritual will reach critical mass within 24 hours. So no pressure," Felicia remarked with gallows humor. "Just save 2 dimensions before dinner tomorrow." As they prepared to depart, gathering specialized equipment and reviewing the latest intelligence on the cult compound's defenses, Naruto felt the symbiote surge with anticipation. It sensed the coming battle and hungered for it in a way that both concerned and energized him. Kurama, too, was fully alert within him, 9 tails swishing with barely contained power. "This will be a true test of our combined abilities," the fox rumbled in his mind. "The symbiote, you, and I, we must function as one to overcome what awaits." "We will," Naruto promised silently. "We have to." As they prepared to leave, Felicia pulled him aside, voice low. "Last night wasn't just comfort before battle. I need you to know that." The unexpected vulnerability in her eyes caught him off guard. Naruto reached out, touching her cheek gently. "I know. For me neither." A small smile curved her lips. "Good. Just making sure we're clear before we potentially die stopping a megalomaniac from merging dimensions." "Such a romantic," Naruto teased, earning a playful punch to his arm. "If you two are done," Sakura called from the doorway, medical pack secured and combat gloves already on, "we have a world to save." "Possibly 2. With final preparations complete, they departed Konoha under clouded skies that matched the gravity of their mission. Storm clouds gathered on the horizon, as if nature itself sensed the dimensional disturbance building across the continent. "Almost. Looks like the end of the world," Sakura observed as they moved swiftly through the trees. "Not if we have anything to say about it," Naruto replied, the symbiote strengthening his resolve with its own determined hunger for battle. Beside him, Felicia moved with predatory grace, her eyes fixed on the path ahead. "End of the world? Please. Where I come from, that's just Tuesday." Despite everything, Naruto found himself smiling. They were heading into unimaginable danger against an enemy who could reshape reality itself. But somehow, with Kurama's power, the symbiote's abilities, and companions he trusted at his side, he felt ready to face whatever awaited them. The confluence was coming. Moriarty's grand design was approaching completion. But so was Naruto Uzumaki, ninja of Konoha, Jinchuriki of the 9 Tails, bearer of the Necrosword, and now, protector of 2 worlds. The storm would break, dimensions would shudder, and at the center of it all, darkness and light would clash for the fate of everything. They traveled hard for hours, pushing their pace to the limits of endurance. Sakura kept up admirably, her chakra control allowing her to maintain speed that would have exhausted most shinobi. Felicia, despite lacking chakra entirely, matched them through sheer physical prowess and the enhancements she'd previously alluded to but never fully explained. As they neared the mountain range where the cult compound was located, Naruto signaled a halt. "We need to approach differently this time. They'll be expecting us after our previous intrusion." "Agreed," Sakura said, consulting a small device Shikamaru had provided. According to the latest intel, the barrier has been strengthened and expanded. It now covers a radius of 10 kilometers around the central temple. Can we go over it? Felicia asked, looking up at the darkening sky. The storm clouds had followed them, now hanging ominously over the mountains ahead. Not safely, Naruto replied. The barrier extends upward too. But there might be another way. He turned to Sakura. You brought the sealing tags? She nodded, producing a set of specialized paper tags covered in complex formulas. Designed by the barrier team specifically for this mission. They should create a temporary passage through any chakra-based barrier. And if the barrier isn't solely chakra-based? Felicia asked, ever practical. That's where you come in, Naruto said. The symbiote can sense and interact with whatever non-chakra elements they're using. Between that and the sealing tags, we should be able to create an opening. They moved forward more cautiously now, approaching the barrier's perimeter from the densely forested western edge. According to their intelligence, this area had fewer patrols due to the difficult terrain, steep slopes and thick undergrowth that made movement challenging. As they drew closer, Naruto felt the symbiote react to the barrier's proximity, not with agitation this time, but with a strange resonance, as if recognizing something familiar. He allowed a tendril to emerge from his palm, reaching toward the invisible boundary. It's responding to the barrier, he murmured. Like it recognizes the frequency. Makes sense, Felicia observed, watching the tendril undulate. If Moriarty is using symbiote matter as part of the barrier construction, your symbiote would sense that connection. Can you use that connection? Sakura asked. Have it communicate with the barrier somehow? Naruto closed his eyes, focusing on the symbiote's sensations. It wasn't like communicating with Kurama, there were no words, only impressions and instincts. But he could guide those instincts, channel them toward a purpose. I think so, he said finally. It can mimic the barrier's energy signature. Create a kind of camouflage that might let us pass through undetected. Worth trying, Felicia decided. If it doesn't work, we fall back to the sealing tags. Naruto allowed the symbiote to spread further, covering his entire body in a thin layer of the living darkness. It extended tentacles that wrapped around Felicia and Sakura as well, linking the three of them in a connected network of symbiote matter. This feels weird, Sakura commented, looking down at the dark tendrils encircling her arms. Try not to think about it too much, Felicia advised. Just let it do its thing. With careful steps, Naruto led them forward, the symbiote pulsing with energy that matched the barrier's frequency. As they reached what should have been the boundary, they felt resistance, like pushing through thick gel, but no alarms triggered. Moment by tense moment, they passed through, the symbiote maintaining its mimicry until they were safely on the other side. It worked, Sakura breathed, relief evident in her voice. Don't celebrate yet, Naruto cautioned, scanning their surroundings. We're in, but getting to the central temple will be even harder now. The valley below had transformed since their previous visit. What had been an organized cult compound was now a massive construction site centered around the temple. New structures had been erected with impossible speed, obelisks of black stone that pulsed with dark energy, arranged in concentric circles around the central temple. Between them, channels had been carved into the earth, filled with a fluid that looked like liquid darkness. Most concerning was the sky directly above the temple, a swirling vortex of energy that distorted the air itself, creating a lens-like effect through which another world could be faintly glimpsed. The confluence has already begun, Felicia whispered. That's a dimensional aperture forming. Then we don't have much time, Sakura said grimly. How do we approach? Naruto studied the compound, noting patrol patterns and security measures. Underground, he decided. The symbiote can sense tunnels beneath the compound, maintenance passages and old mine shafts from before the cult took over. Lead the way, Felicia agreed. They moved along the ridge, using the forest for cover until they reached a point where Naruto sensed an entrance to the underground network. A careful application of Rasengan cleared debris from an abandoned mine entrance, revealing a narrow passage leading downward. "Stay close," Naruto warned as they entered the darkness. Some of these tunnels might not be stable. The symbiote provided both navigation and illumination, casting a soft red glow that allowed them to see without announcing their presence too obviously. The tunnels twisted and branched, forming a labyrinth beneath the compound, but Naruto followed the symbiote's instincts, which drew them unerringly toward the central temple. "These aren't just mines," Sakura observed, examining markings on the tunnel walls. "Some of these passages were deliberately constructed. Look at these symbols, they're ancient, predating the hidden village system. The cult has been preparing for this for generations," Felicia realized. "These tunnels are part of the ritual network." As if confirming her assessment, the channels they'd seen on the surface continued underground, the black fluid flowing through carved troughs in the stone floor. As they progressed deeper, the concentration of this substance increased. "What is this stuff?" Sakura asked, careful not to touch the flowing darkness. "Symbiote essence," Felicia replied. "But purified, processed. Moriarty has found a way to refine it into raw material." "It's alive," Naruto added, feeling the symbiote within him respond to the substance. "But mindless. Just, potential waiting to be shaped." They followed the flow of the black fluid, reasoning that it would lead to the central processing area. The tunnels gradually transitioned from rough-hewn mine shafts to constructed passages with reinforced walls and technical equipment installed at regular intervals. "We're under the laboratory complex now," Naruto informed them, recognizing the architectural style from their previous infiltration. The tunnel ended at a heavy metal door with a security panel. Felicia examined it briefly, then retrieved tools from her belt. "Standard electronic lock with biometric backup," she murmured, working quickly. "Advanced for your world, but pretty basic compared to what I deal with back home." Within moments, the lock disengaged with a soft click, and the door slid open to reveal a maintenance corridor lined with pipes and conduits. They moved silently through it, following the largest conduits that presumably carried the processed symbiote fluid to its destination. The corridor opened into a vast chamber that took their breath away. Dozens of massive tanks filled with the black fluid lined the walls, connected by a network of tubes and machinery that pulsed with both mechanical and organic rhythms. In the center of the chamber stood a platform where the fluid converged, flowing upward into the ceiling through a central column. "The heart of the operation," Felicia whispered. "They're pumping refined symbiote matter directly into the temple above." "For what purpose?" Sakura asked, examining the nearest tank with a medical researcher's eye. "To create a medium that can exist in both dimensions simultaneously," came a familiar voice from behind them. "The perfect binding agent for the confluence." They spun to find Moriarty standing at the chamber entrance, still in his immaculate suit, hands clasped behind his back. Unlike their previous encounter, he made no move to activate security systems or call for guards. "I must commend your persistence," he said, stepping into the chamber. "Though I did leave a rather obvious trail for you to follow. The tunnels, the fluid channels, all designed to lead worthy adversaries to this point at this precise moment. You wanted us here," Naruto realized, the symbiote coiling defensively around him. "Of course." Moriarty smiled thinly. "Every great work requires witnesses. And you three, the symbiote host, the interdimensional catalyst, and the medical genius, are perfect for the role." "We're not here to witness anything," Sakura stated firmly, pulling on her combat gloves. "We're here to stop you." Moriarty sighed, as if disappointed by a student's poor performance. "Stop me? My dear, I am merely the architect. The confluence is a natural cosmic event that I am simply refining. Guiding toward optimal outcome. By merging two worlds without consent from either." Felicia challenged. "That's not architecture, it's destruction." "Creation requires destruction," Moriarty countered, beginning to circle the chamber with measured steps. The old forms must give way to the new. Your world, Miss Hardy, is stagnating under the weight of its technological excess. Mr. Uzumaki's world is limited by its reliance on an energy source, chakra, that is fundamentally finite. And your solution is to smash them together? Naruto demanded. Merge them, Moriarty corrected. Symbiotes and chakra, two forms of energy that can adapt, bond, transform. The perfect components for a new reality. He gestured to the central column. What flows through this facility is the future, a hybrid medium that can exist in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. As he spoke, Naruto felt something wrong about Moriarty, the same distortion Kurama had sensed before, but stronger now. It was as if the man before them was only partially present in their reality, the rest of him existing elsewhere. You're not fully here, Naruto said suddenly. You're projecting yourself between dimensions. Moriarty's smile widened, showing too many teeth. Perceptive. My consciousness exists at the intersection point, the perfect vantage from which to oversee the confluence. That's why your movement seemed wrong, Felicia realized. You're not really human at all. I was, once, Moriarty admitted. A scientist from your world, Ms. Hardy. One who glimpsed the multiverse and understood that the barriers between worlds were not walls but membranes, permeable, malleable, designed to be transcended. As he spoke, his form flickered slightly, revealing momentary glimpses of something else beneath the human exterior, something with too many limbs and eyes that shimmered with cosmic awareness. Enough talk, Sakura declared, chakra visibly gathering around her fists. Whatever you are, whatever you're planning, it ends now. Moriarty regarded her with something like pity. It cannot end. It has already begun. He gestured upward. The aperture above the temple grows with each passing minute. When it reaches critical mass, the confluence will occur regardless of any action you might take. Then we'll have to close it before that happens, Naruto stated, allowing the symbiote to form his combat mode, crimson and black armor flowing across his body, enhancing his already formidable abilities. You may certainly try, Moriarty replied, unperturbed. In fact, I encourage it. The energy you expend in the attempt will only accelerate the process. He stepped back toward the entrance. I leave you to your heroic endeavors. We will speak again when you better understand the inevitability of what approaches. Before they could move to stop him, Moriarty's form simply folded in on itself, disappearing like a paper figure collapsed along impossible dimensions. That was unsettling, Felicia commented into the silence that followed. He's insane, Sakura stated flatly. But dangerous. We need to disable this facility immediately. Naruto approached the central column, examining the machinery that pumped the processed symbiote fluid upward. If we destroy this, we might disrupt the flow to the temple above. Or trigger a catastrophic release, Felicia cautioned. That much concentrated symbiote matter, suddenly uncontained. It could bond with everything in the vicinity. So we need a controlled shutdown, Sakura concluded. She moved to one of the control panels, studying the displays. These readings suggest the system operates on a cycle. There's a purge protocol built in for maintenance. Can you trigger it? Naruto asked. Sakura's fingers moved over the controls with surprising familiarity. Medical systems have similar protocols for biohazard containment. The principles should be. She trailed off, focusing intently before looking up with satisfaction. Got it. Purge sequence initiated. The system will drain the processed fluid into containment reservoirs beneath the facility. Warnings began to flash across the displays as the machinery's rhythm changed, the fluid flow reversing direction. The central column, previously pulsing with upward momentum, now drew the black substance back downward. We've bought some time, Sakura said. But not much. We still need to reach the temple and disrupt the aperture directly. There should be access to the temple level from here, Naruto said, the symbiote guiding his awareness. Through the facility's layout. This way. They followed a maintenance stairwell upward, emerging into the laboratory complex they'd infiltrated on their previous mission. Unlike before, it was now deserted, equipment still running but no personnel in sight. Where is everyone? Felicia wondered, moving cautiously through the lab. Probably at the temple, Naruto guessed. If the confluence is reaching critical mass, they'd all be there for the final ritual. They continued through the complex, following signs of recent activity until they reached a corridor that connected the laboratory to the main temple structure. As they approached the junction, Naruto suddenly halted, the symbiote reacting to something ahead. "We've got company," he warned. Around the corner came three figures that had once been human but were now nightmarish hybrids, their bodies half covered in symbiote matter, the exposed portions augmented with mechanical components. Their movements were synchronized, suggesting a hive-mind connection. "The enhanced guards," Felicia whispered. "Moriarty's perfect soldiers." The hybrid guards charged without warning, moving with unnatural speed. Naruto met the first head-on, symbiote armor absorbing the impact as they crashed together in a tangle of black tendrils and mechanical limbs. Sakura engaged the second, her chakra-enhanced strength shattering mechanical components even as the symbiote portions tried to reform. Felicia, nimble and precise, danced around the third, her claws finding vulnerable junction points between organic and mechanical parts. The battle was brief but intense. The hybrids fought with inhuman determination but lacked the strategic thinking of truly independent beings. Naruto discovered that combining Kurama's chakra with symbiote attacks created a resonance that disrupted the enemy's symbiote portions, while Sakura's medical knowledge allowed her to target neural control points. When the last hybrid fell, they paused only long enough to catch their breath before continuing toward the temple. The corridor opened into an antechamber lined with ancient stone carvings depicting a being of darkness spreading across multiple worlds. Knull, Felicia identified the figure. The cult has been worshipping him for centuries, preparing for his return. But Moriarty is using their belief for his own purposes, Naruto added. The confluence isn't about bringing Knull back, it's about creating a new reality that Moriarty can shape. Either way, we need to stop it, Sakura reminded them, pushing open the massive doors that led into the temple proper. The sight that greeted them was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The temple's interior rose hundreds of feet to an open ceiling where the swirling aperture now dominated the sky, a massive lens of distorted space through which another world could be clearly seen. The cityscape of Felicia's New York wavered like a reflection in disturbed water, growing more solid by the minute as the dimensions moved closer to merging. Below the aperture, a ritual was in progress. Hundreds of cult members arranged in concentric circles chanted in unified voice, their bodies partially transformed with symbiote matter. At the center of the formation stood a raised altar where 5 figures, the high priests, judging by their elaborate robes, conducted the primary ritual, channeling energy upward toward the dimensional tear. The 5 represent the 5 great nations, Sakura observed. They're using the symbolic power of the shinobi world's political structure to anchor the ritual. And look at the pattern they're standing in, Felicia added, pointing to the floor where intricate channels carried the black fluid in a design that matched the spiral dragon symbol of Knull. It's a massive conduit drawing power from the entire continent. Naruto studied the scene, assessing their options. Direct confrontation against hundreds of cultists wasn't feasible, even with their combined abilities. They needed to disrupt the ritual itself. The altar, he decided. That's the focal point. If we can disrupt the 5 high priests, we might be able to destabilize the entire process. They'll sense us the moment we enter the main chamber, Sakura cautioned. Then we don't try to hide, Naruto replied, a plan forming. We make an entrance they can't ignore. He explained his strategy quickly, and they moved into position. Sakura prepared an explosive tag modified with medical chakra that would disrupt the symbiote connection among the cultists. Felicia readied her equipment, focusing on speed and distraction rather than direct combat. Naruto, meanwhile, called upon both Kurama and the symbiote for maximum power. The transformation was more complete than ever before, crimson chakra and black symbiote matter merging to create a form that combined the most fearsome aspects of both. 9 tails of solid darkness extended from his back, while his body took on a form that resembled both Kurama's bestial features and the sleek deadliness of the symbiote. The Necrosword manifested in his hand, pulsing with hungry anticipation. "Now," he called, and they burst into the temple. Sakura's explosive tag detonated first, sending a wave of disruption through the cult formation. Many collapsed immediately, the forced symbiote connection broken by the specialized chakra formula. Felicia launched herself high into the air, throwing specialized disruptors that created strobing light patterns, particularly effective against symbiote-enhanced vision. In the confusion, Naruto charged directly for the central altar, moving so quickly he appeared as little more than a crimson-black blur. The high priests turned as one to face the threat, raising barriers of combined chakra and symbiote matter. "The vessel comes to us," one intoned, voice echoing with unnatural resonance. "Knull's chosen approaches." "I'm nobody's chosen," Naruto growled, the Necrosword cleaving through their barrier with surprising ease. "And I'm done with gods trying to use me." The priests attacked in perfect coordination, each using techniques that combined forbidden jutsu with symbiote abilities. Black lightning, corrosive mist, gravity distortion, powers that should not have been possible in the shinobi world, made reality through Moriarty's dimensional tampering. Naruto fought with everything he had, Kurama's chakra and the symbiote working in perfect harmony. The Necrosword responded to his will as if it had always been part of him, cutting through seemingly impenetrable defenses and disrupting the priest's techniques. Across the chamber, Sakura and Felicia engaged the remaining cultists, preventing them from reforming their ritual circles. Sakura's medical ninjutsu proved surprisingly effective against the symbiote-enhanced opponents, while Felicia's acrobatic combat style and specialized equipment created chaos in their ranks. The battle raged with increasing intensity as the aperture above continued to expand. Through it, they could now see people on the other side, citizens of New York looking up in confusion and fear at the tear in their sky that revealed another world. "The dimensional barrier is collapsing," Felicia called, dispatching another cultist with a well-placed kick. "We're running out of time." Naruto, locked in combat with 3 high priests simultaneously, felt the symbiote pulse with a sudden insight. The Necrosword wasn't just a weapon, it was a key, created by Knull to cut through reality itself. The sword, he realized. It can seal the aperture. With renewed determination, he broke away from the priests, launching himself upward toward the dimensional tear. The symbiote formed wing-like structures that carried him higher, Kurama's chakra providing the raw power needed to ascend against the pull of the aperture's gravity. "Naruto, wait!" Sakura called from below. "The energy backlash could kill you." But there was no other option. As he approached the aperture, Naruto could see both worlds with perfect clarity, Konoha and New York, ninja and civilians, 2 realities on the verge of catastrophic merger. The Necrosword pulsed in his hand, hungry for what was to come. Naruto raised it above his head, focusing all his will, all his chakra, all the symbiote's power into the blade. "Close," he commanded, driving the sword into the very center of the dimensional tear. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Energy exploded outward in a shockwave that sent Naruto plummeting back to the temple floor. The aperture began to contract, reality on both sides struggling to reassert its boundaries. Below, the high priests screamed in unified agony as their connection to the confluence was severed. The cultists scattered in panic, their coordinated purpose shattered by the disruption of the ritual. Naruto crashed into the altar, the impact knocking the breath from his lungs despite the symbiote's protection. The sword was gone, consumed in the act of sealing the aperture. He felt its absence like a physical wound, the symbiote within him keening for its lost aspect. Felicia and Sakura fought their way to his side as the temple began to collapse around them, the structure's integrity failing as the dimensional energies it had been channeling dissipated violently. "We need to get out of here," Sakura urged, helping Naruto to his feet. "The aperture," Naruto gasped, looking upward. Did it work? The tear was shrinking rapidly, the images of New York fading as the dimensions separated. But something was wrong, the contraction wasn't uniform. A secondary distortion had formed at the edge of the primary aperture, a smaller tear that pulsed with familiar energy. Moriarty, Felicia identified it instantly. He's creating an escape route, a personal dimensional pocket to weather the collapse. The distortion expanded just enough to reveal Moriarty's form, now barely maintaining its human appearance. Parts of him shifted and changed, revealing glimpses of something vast and incomprehensible beyond. Impressive intervention, his voice echoed from the tier, still maintaining its cultured tone despite his deteriorating form. But ultimately futile. The confluence cannot be prevented, only delayed. I have seen the timeline, the inevitable convergence. What you have done here today is merely postponement. Then we'll stop you again, Naruto declared, the symbiote coalescing around him in response to his determination. As many times as it takes. Moriarty's laughter resonated with harmonic frequencies that made the air itself vibrate painfully. Bold words from one who understands so little. We will meet again, Naruto Uzumaki. When your understanding has evolved. The secondary aperture sealed itself with a sound like reality sighing. Moriarty's form vanishing with it. Above, the primary tear continued its rapid contraction until it closed completely with a thunderclap that shook the entire temple. Time to go, Felicia urged as chunks of ceiling began to fall around them. They fled through collapsing corridors, the structure disintegrating as the energies that had sustained it dissipated. Cultists ran in panic or lay where they had fallen, the symbiote portions of their bodies going dormant without the confluence energy to sustain them. They emerged from the temple just as its central dome collapsed completely, sending a plume of dust and debris skyward. The barrier that had surrounded the compound was gone, the technology that generated it destroyed in the backlash. It's over, Sakura breathed, watching as the unnatural storm clouds above began to disperse, revealing clear sky beyond. For now, Naruto amended, feeling the symbiote settle into a quieter state within him. Without the Necrosword, it seemed less driven, more integrated with his own being. Moriarty escaped. And he was right about one thing, we only delayed whatever he's planning. That's still a win in my book, Felicia said, brushing dust from her costume. She looked up at the clearing sky with a complex expression, relief mingled with something like loss. The connection between our worlds is closed. The implication hung between them. With the dimensional tier sealed, Felicia's path home was gone as well. She was truly stranded in Naruto's world now, unless another way could be found. Naruto moved to her side, not touching her but close enough to offer support if wanted. We'll find a way to get you home. If there's one-dimensional scientist in the multiverse, there have to be others. She turned to him, a small smile touching her lips despite the exhaustion evident in her posture. Maybe. But right now, I'm not sure I'm in a hurry to leave. She glanced around at the mountain landscape, now returning to its natural state as the cult structures crumbled. This world has its charms. Sakura approached, medical kit already in hand. We should report back to Konoha. Kakashi will want to know what happened, and we all need medical attention. Agreed, Naruto said, wincing as the adrenaline faded and various injuries made themselves known. The symbiote was already working to heal them, but even its remarkable abilities had limits after such intense combat. They made their way down from the mountain much more slowly than they had ascended it, each processing the events of the day in their own way. The cult was scattered, the confluence prevented, but questions remained. Moriarty was still out there, moving between dimensions with unknown purpose. The Abyss cult might regroup under new leadership. And the symbiote within Naruto, while more integrated than ever, still carried the essence of a god who had slaughtered his way across cosmos. Yet as they journeyed back toward Konoha, Naruto felt something he hadn't expected, a sense of possibility rather than dread. The symbiote, without the Necrosword's driving hunger, seemed content to be bonded with him, its abilities now truly his to command rather than merely channel. You've changed, Felicia observed as they made camp for the night, too exhausted to continue without rest. The symbiote has settled into you differently. Naruto nodded, examining his hand where black tendrils occasionally emerged to brush against his skin like affectionate pets. Without the sword, it feels more balanced. Less like it's trying to make me into something else, more like it's becoming part of who I already am. The Necrosword contained the most aggressive aspects of Knull's power, Felicia explained, sitting beside him near their small campfire. Without it, the symbiote is free to adapt to you without that overwhelming influence. It's still dangerous, Sakura interjected from where she was preparing field rations. You should continue the monitoring protocol when we return to the village. Of course, Naruto agreed easily. But I don't think we need to fear it taking control anymore. It's found its place. Inside his mindscape, this assessment was confirmed by Kurama, who had established something approaching respectful coexistence with the symbiote essence. The boundaries between their territories had softened, allowing limited sharing of the space without hostility. So what happens now? Felicia asked, looking up at the stars emerging in the darkening sky. After we get back to Konoha, I mean. Rebuild. Recover. Prepare, Naruto answered simply. Moriarty is still out there, and he seemed pretty convinced the confluence would happen eventually. And in the meantime, she pressed, her question carrying weight beyond immediate tactical concerns. Naruto met her gaze, understanding the unasked question beneath her words. In the meantime, we live. Figure things out as we go. He glanced at Sakura, then back to Felicia. All of us. Sakura, perceptive as always, gave a small nod of acknowledgement. The dynamics between them were complicated, history and new connections creating a tapestry none of them had anticipated. But they were shinobi, and in Felicia's case, an interdimensional adventurer, adaptation was part of survival. As night settled fully around them, each lost in their own thoughts, Naruto felt the symbiote stir with an emotion he hadn't expected from the alien entity, contentment. Not the satisfaction of battle or the hunger for power, but simple pleasure in existence, in connection. He found himself sharing the sentiment. Despite the dangers they'd faced and those still to come, despite the complexity of relationships and responsibilities, there was a rightness to where he found himself. Shinobi of Konoha, host to both the nine-tailed fox and a symbiote from another dimension, protector of worlds, and companion to remarkable individuals who challenged and supported him in equal measure. Tomorrow would bring Konoha, reports, medical examinations, and the beginning of recovery efforts across the 5 nations. The future beyond that remained uncertain, with Moriarty's ominous promise of return hanging over everything. But tonight, under stars that had witnessed the near merging of worlds and their subsequent salvation, Naruto Uzumaki found peace in complexity, strength in connection, and hope in the darkness that had become part of him. The symbiote, once an invader, now pulsed in harmony with his heartbeat. Kurama, once a prisoner, now watched the stars through Naruto's eyes with ancient curiosity. And Felicia Hardy, once a visitor from another dimension, now sat beside him not as a temporary ally but as something more, a companion whose path had unexpectedly twined with his own. Whatever came next, they would face it together, darkness and light, chaos and order, all flowing through him in balance. Chapter 3, God of the Abyss. A month after their confrontation with Moriarty at the cult compound, Naruto stood atop the Hokage monument, watching the sunrise paint Konoha in gold and amber. The village had largely returned to normal after the confluence crisis, buildings repaired, routines resumed, citizens going about their daily lives with the remarkable resilience that had always defined the Hidden Leaf. But appearances could be deceiving. Beneath the veneer of normalcy, preparations continued. Intelligence networks across all 5 nations remained on high alert for any sign of Moriarty or renewed cult activity. Special response teams had been established, trained specifically to deal with symbiote-enhanced threats. And Naruto himself had spent weeks helping to develop countermeasures, strategies, and contingencies for when, not if, their dimensional adversary returned. The symbiote stirred beneath his skin, responding to his thoughts with something like anticipation. Without the Necrosword's influence, it had become more integrated with Naruto's consciousness, less a separate entity fighting for control and more an extension of his own being, like Kurama had become over the years. "Beautiful view," Felicia's voice came from behind him. She moved silently to stand beside him at the edge of the cliff, her platinum hair catching the morning light. She'd adapted to life in Konoha with surprising ease, her skills as Black Cat finding ready application in the shinobi world. "One of my favorite spots," Naruto replied, enjoying her presence beside him. The weeks since their return had seen their relationship deepen, complicated by the uncertainty of her situation but strengthened by shared purpose and genuine connection. "Any word from the research team?" she asked, knowing he'd come from a meeting with Konoha's scientists and SEAL experts who were investigating possibilities of interdimensional travel. Naruto shook his head. "Nothing concrete. They can theorize about dimensional barriers all day, but without actual technology or techniques to pierce them." He left the implication hanging. Felicia nodded, her expression neutral though Naruto had learned to read the subtle tensions in her posture. The question of whether she would ever return to her home dimension remained unresolved, a shadow that occasionally fell across her moments of happiness in this new world. "Do you miss it?" Naruto asked. "Your world, I mean." She considered the question, green eyes scanning the village below. "Parts of it. Friends. Favorite places." A small smile touched her lips. "Decent coffee. Hey, I've been learning to make it the way you showed me," Naruto protested with mock offense. "And you're improving," she assured him, bumping her shoulder against his. "But I don't miss the constant alien invasions, the registration acts, the way costumed heroes and villains treated New York like their personal playground." "Sounds chaotic." It was. She turned to face him directly. "Here, the dangers make sense. The politics, while complicated, follow logical patterns. And people with power generally have training and responsibility to match it." "Generally," Naruto agreed, thinking of exceptions throughout shinobi history. "What I'm trying to say," Felicia continued, "is that I'm not just waiting for a door home to open. I've found things here worth staying for." Her gaze held his, leaving no doubt about who, she meant. Before Naruto could respond, a ripple passed through the symbiote beneath his skin, a warning. Simultaneously, Kurama stirred within his mindscape, the great fox's awareness expanding outward. "Something's wrong," Naruto said, scanning the horizon. Felicia tensed beside him, instantly alert. "Cult activity?" "No." Naruto frowned, trying to interpret the symbiote's reaction. "Something else. Something, familiar, but wrong." As if in answer, the air above Konoha shimmered, distorting like heat waves over desert sand. A sudden pressure descended, heavy and oppressive, making birds take flight in panic and setting off sensor alarms throughout the village. "That's not Moriarty's energy signature," Felicia observed, eyes narrowed as she watched the distortion expand. "No," Naruto agreed grimly. "It's Otsutsuki." The distortion split open with a sound like tearing fabric, revealing a rift similar to the aperture they'd closed at the cult compound but with different characteristics, more stable, more precise, and pulsing with chakra rather than symbiote energy. Through the rift stepped a figure that made Naruto's blood run cold. Though smaller than Naruto remembered and somewhat different in appearance, the white skin, pale eyes, and imperious bearing were unmistakable. "Momoshiki," he breathed. Not exactly the Momoshiki Otsutsuki he and Sasuke had defeated years ago, but undeniably connected to that alien being. This version appeared more concentrated, distilled, as if only a portion of the original entity had reformed, gathering power over time. The Momoshiki remnant hovered above Konoha, pale eyes scanning the village until they locked onto Naruto. A smile that contained no warmth spread across its aristocratic features. "Vessel of the Nine Tails," it called, voice carrying unnaturally through the air. "You have acquired a new power since we last met." "How interesting." Throughout the village, shinobi were already mobilizing. Civilians moved quickly toward shelters, emergency protocols activating with practiced efficiency. On the Hokage Tower, Kakashi appeared, flanked by ANBU captains as he assessed the threat. "We need to draw him away from the village," Naruto said, the symbiote already flowing across his skin, responding to the imminent combat. "Too many people could get hurt if we fight here." Felicia nodded, checking her equipment. "I'll coordinate with the defense forces, help with evacuation if needed." "Be careful," Naruto cautioned, fully transforming now. The crimson and black armor of his combined symbiote bijou form manifested, still intimidating despite the loss of the Necrosword. "This isn't like fighting cultists. Otsutsuki are on another level entirely." "So am I," she replied with a confident smile that didn't quite mask her concern. "Don't keep all the fun to yourself." With a final nod, Naruto launched himself toward the hovering figure, symbiote forming wing-like structures that carried him upward with impressive speed. As he approached, Momoshiki's remnant observed him with clinical interest. "Fascinating," it commented. "You've bonded with an entity from beyond our dimensional cluster. The power signature is unique. What do you want, Momoshiki?" Naruto demanded, hovering at a cautious distance. "You were defeated." "Defeated?" The remnant laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "Aspects of me were dispersed, yes. But Otsutsuki cannot truly die, only transform, evolve, adapt." Its pale eyes gleamed with hunger. "And you, Uzumaki Naruto, have provided me with the perfect opportunity to ascend beyond my previous limitations." Without warning, it attacked, palm thrust forward, releasing a compressed ball of chakra that expanded into a destructive wave. Naruto dodged, the symbiote enhancing his already impressive speed, but the edge of the blast caught him, sending him tumbling through the air. He recovered quickly, forming a counterattack, a Rasengan infused with both Kurama's chakra and symbiote matter. The spiraling orb pulsed with dual energy as he charged, driving it toward Momoshiki's chest. The Otsutsuki caught the attack with bare hands, absorbing the chakra portion while the symbiote component burned its palms. It hissed in pain, revealing the first crack in its composed exterior. "Interesting," it murmured. "Your new power cannot be absorbed through conventional means. All the more reason to claim it for myself." They clashed again, the battle carrying them away from the village center as Naruto deliberately drew Momoshiki toward the uninhabited forests beyond Konoha's walls. The remnant pursued eagerly, seemingly content to focus solely on Naruto rather than the village itself. Below, Konoha's defenses activated fully. Sensor teams tracked the aerial battle while combat squads moved into strategic positions. Felicia, working alongside Sakura and Shikamaru, helped coordinate civilian evacuation while preparing response teams. "He's drawing it away from population centers," Shikamaru observed, watching Naruto and Momoshiki disappear beyond the village walls. "Smart move. Is that really Momoshiki Otsutsuki?" Sakura asked, medical kit ready as she prepared for potential casualties. "I thought Naruto and Sasuke destroyed him years ago." "Not destroyed," Shikamaru corrected. "Defeated. And from what our sensors indicate, this isn't the complete entity, more like a fragment that's been gathering strength." "A remnant," Felicia supplied, recalling what Naruto had told her about the Otsutsuki clan. "But why now? Why attack when Naruto's at his strongest with both Kurama and the symbiote?" "Because of the symbiote," Kakashi answered, joining their group. "Our intelligence suggests the Otsutsuki have been seeking new power sources beyond chakra for centuries. A symbiote from another dimension, especially one bonded with a bijou host, would be an unprecedented prize. So it's not here to destroy," Felicia realized. "It's here to harvest." "Precisely," Kakashi confirmed. "Which means Naruto is in even greater danger than if this were simply about revenge." As they spoke, the ground beneath them trembled, the aftershock of a massive energy collision beyond the village boundaries. In the distance, a plume of dust and debris rose above the forest canopy. "He won't fight at full strength while worried about collateral damage," Felicia said, making a decision. "I'm going after him." "It's too dangerous," Sakura protested. This is an Otsutsuki we're talking about, and Naruto's fighting it alone while trying to protect the village, Felicia cut in. He needs backup, and I understand the symbiote better than anyone here. Kakashi considered her for a moment, then nodded. Go. Take a communication device. We'll monitor from here and send reinforcements when we can. Without waiting for further discussion, Felicia took off, her enhanced agility allowing her to race across rooftops and leap the village wall in a single bound. The years of traversing New York's urban landscape had prepared her well for Konoha's architecture, and her time training with Naruto had taught her to navigate the surrounding forests with surprising speed. As she approached the battle zone, the devastation became apparent. Trees had been uprooted or shattered, craters pocked the landscape, and the air itself felt charged with competing energies, the familiar warmth of chakra clashing with the alien resonance of symbiote power. She found them in a cleared area that hadn't been a clearing minutes before. Naruto and Momoshiki fought with incredible speed and power, their movements often too fast for normal human perception. The symbiote enhanced Naruto's already formidable abilities, allowing him to match the Otsutsuki's otherworldly power. Felicia took cover, assessing the situation. Direct intervention would likely be counterproductive, she lacked the raw power to significantly damage an Otsutsuki. But distraction, disruption. Those were specialties of the Black Cat. She watched, waiting for her moment as the combatants separated after a particularly violent exchange. Naruto was showing signs of strain, the symbiote armor bore scorch marks and tears that healed almost as quickly as they formed. Momoshiki's remnant, though smaller than its original form, showed few signs of damage beyond minor burns where symbiote matter had contacted its pale skin. You fight impressively for a lower being, Momoshiki commented, hovering above the battlefield. This new power complements your chakra in ways I had not anticipated. All the more reason to acquire it for myself. It's not something you can just take, Naruto shot back, the symbiote rippling. As it repaired damage and prepared for the next exchange. The symbiote chooses its host. Everything can be taken with sufficient power, Momoshiki replied dismissively. The symbiote, the bijou, even your life, all will serve to elevate me beyond what any Otsutsuki has achieved before. It raised a hand, palm facing outward, and began to gather energy, not just chakra, but something more fundamental, drawing power from the environment itself in a way that made reality waver around it. Felicia recognized her opportunity. From her position at the edge of the clearing, she launched 3 small devices, specialized flashbangs designed to disrupt symbiote perception. They wouldn't harm Momoshiki directly, but they might break its concentration. The devices detonated in sequence, creating a cascade of light and sound that momentarily distorted the battlefield. Momoshiki's attack faltered as it turned toward the source of the disruption, pale eyes narrowing. A human, it said, genuinely surprised to find Felicia revealed by the fading light. You bring pets to our battle, Ninetales. She's no pet, Naruto growled, seizing the momentary advantage to launch a counterattack, symbiote tendrils extending to wrap around Momoshiki's limbs while he prepared a massive Rasengan infused with both Kurama's chakra and symbiote matter. The Otsutsuki broke free with a pulse of chakra that severed the tendrils, but not before Naruto closed the distance, driving the Rasengan directly into its chest. The impact sent Momoshiki hurtling backward, crashing through several trees before coming to a stop, embedded in the earth. Felicia. Naruto called, landing near her position. You shouldn't be here. It's too dangerous. You're welcome for the assist, she replied dryly. And I'm exactly where I need to be. You're holding back because you're trying to keep the fight contained. If I go all out, the damage could reach Konoha, he admitted. This thing is feeding on ambient energy, the more I use, the stronger it gets. Then we need a different approach, Felicia said. It wants the symbiote. Let's use that. Before she could elaborate, a wave of gravitational force swept across the clearing, pulling them both toward Momoshiki, who had emerged from the impact crater. Its physical form showed damage now, cracks in its pale skin revealing a pulsing light beneath, the chest area concave where Naruto's Rasengan had struck. Interference, it hissed, eyes fixed on Felicia. The human will be eliminated. It gestured sharply, and a concentrated beam of energy shot toward Felicia. Naruto moved with incredible speed, the symbiote responding to his desperate need for protection. He intercepted the attack, symbiote armor absorbing much of the impact but still sending him flying backward. Felicia rolled aside as Naruto crashed near her position, his symbiote armor smoking and partially retracted to reveal burned skin beneath. Naruto. I'm fine, he grunted, pushing himself up as the symbiote worked frantically to repair the damage. But we need to end this quickly. It's getting stronger with every exchange. Momoshiki drifted toward them, a smile of cruel satisfaction on its aristocratic features. Your attachment to these lesser beings weakens you, Ninetail's vessel. It always has. The Otsutsuki raised both hands, preparing another attack, when suddenly it paused, head tilting as if listening to something beyond normal perception. Its expression shifted from triumphant to cautious. Curious timing, it murmured. The air behind Momoshiki rippled, folding in on itself to create an opening similar to the one through which the Otsutsuki had arrived, but with different characteristics. This portal swirled with both chakra energy and something darker, more structured. Through the new opening stepped a familiar figure in an immaculate suit, his movement still carrying that unsettling quality of existing slightly out of sync with reality around him. Moriarty, Naruto breathed, the symbiote reacting with both aggression and wariness at the dimensional traveler's appearance. Mr. Uzumaki, Moriarty greeted with a slight nod before turning his attention to Momoshiki. And the esteemed Otsutsuki remnant. How fascinating to find you here, precisely as calculated. Momoshiki regarded the newcomer with narrowed eyes. You are not of this world. Not entirely. An astute observation, Moriarty replied, straightening his cuffs in a gesture incongruously mundane given the circumstances. I exist at the intersection of multiple realities, much as you exist as a fragment of your original self, seeking to reclaim power through adaptation and absorption. You know much for a being I have never encountered, Momoshiki said, suspicion evident in its tone. I know all beings who cross dimensional boundaries, Moriarty stated simply. It is my particular area of expertise. Which brings me to the purpose of this intervention. He gestured toward Naruto and Felicia. You seek the power of the symbiote bonded with the Ninetail's host. I seek the advancement of the confluence. Perhaps our interests might align. Momoshiki's pale eyes gleamed with interest. Speak plainly, Boundary Walker. Naruto used the distraction to move closer to Felicia, the symbiote extending tendrils to help her up. They're negotiating, he whispered. This is bad. Actually, she murmured back, it's an opportunity. They both want the same thing, your power. But neither wants to share with the other. Understanding dawned in Naruto's eyes. We can use their conflict against them. Exactly. Meanwhile, Moriarty continued his proposal to Momoshiki. The symbiote represents a form of power outside your usual consumption patterns, one that could elevate you beyond the limitations of chakra dependency. I possess the means to stabilize such a bonding, even for an entity of your unique composition. And what do you seek in exchange for this assistance? Momoshiki asked, clearly intrigued despite its caution. Your participation in the confluence, Moriarty answered. The merging of dimensions requires anchors, beings of significant power who exist simultaneously across multiple planes of reality. Your nature as a remnant makes you uniquely qualified. The Otsutsuki have our own plans for dimensional manipulation, Momoshiki replied. Why should I participate in yours? Because mine will succeed within your lifetime, Moriarty said simply. While your clan's approach requires centuries of cultivation and harvest. Inefficient, by comparison. As they spoke, Naruto and Felicia communicated in hushed tones, formulating a strategy. The symbiote, sensing Naruto's intentions, rippled with anticipation beneath his skin. If they're working together, we're outmatched in direct confrontation, Naruto admitted. But Moriarty mentioned anchors, beings that exist across dimensions. The nexus point, Felicia realized. The temple where we fought before. It was built on a natural weak point between dimensions. If we can get there before they complete whatever ritual Moriarty's planning, we can use the nexus energy against them, Felicia finished. But we'd need to split up. One of us to delay them, one to prepare the nexus. Naruto nodded grimly. I'll keep them occupied. You get to the nexus and prepare whatever countermeasures you can. That's suicide, Felicia protested. You can't fight both of them alone. I don't need to win, Naruto replied with determined calm. I just need to give you enough time. Before she could argue further, Momoshiki and Moriarty concluded their negotiation. The Otsutsuki turned toward them, pale eyes gleaming with renewed purpose. It seems our encounter has evolved beyond a simple harvesting, it announced. The Boundary Walker offers an intriguing alternative, one that will still result in my acquisition of your power, Vessel of the Nine Tails. Not gonna happen, Naruto stated flatly, the symbiote forming its combat mode around him, crimson and black armor flowing across his body, enhancing his already formidable presence. Moriarty smiled thinly. Resistance is anticipated but ultimately irrelevant. The symbiote will fulfill its cosmic purpose as a conduit between dimensions, with or without your cooperation. Now, Naruto whispered to Felicia. They moved with practiced coordination, Naruto charging directly at Momoshiki and Moriarty while Felicia used the distraction to vanish into the forest, heading toward the mountains where the temple ruin still stood. A tactical retreat? Moriarty observed, watching Felicia disappear. How predictable. I'm your opponent, Naruto growled, symbiote tendrils whipping around him as Kurama's chakra surged beneath. Both of you. Momoshiki laughed, the sound like shattering crystal. Brave but foolish. Your power is impressive, Vessel, but against both of us, you stand no chance. We'll see about that, Naruto replied, forming the hand sign for his signature technique. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Dozens of clones appeared, each covered in the same symbiote armor as the original. They attacked from all directions, forcing Momoshiki and Moriarty to defend simultaneously against multiple threats. The battle that ensued was unlike anything Konoha's forests had ever witnessed. Momoshiki unleashed devastating chakra techniques that obliterated clones by the dozen, while Moriarty demonstrated abilities that defied conventional understanding, warping space around himself, phasing through solid matter, and countering symbiote attacks with technologies that seemed to predict their movements. Yet Naruto persisted, creating new clones as fast as they were destroyed, each one buying precious seconds for Felicia to increase her lead. The symbiote adapted to each counter, learning from failures and evolving new approaches. Kurama's chakra provided the raw power needed to maintain this relentless assault despite mounting injuries and fatigue. Your persistence is admirable, Moriarty commented during a brief lull, adjusting his tie as if attending a business meeting rather than a reality-shaking confrontation. But ultimately wasteful. The female has gone to the nexus point, obviously hoping to use its properties against us. A transparent stratagem, Momoshiki agreed, hovering beside Moriarty with arms crossed. Though I admit curiosity about what she hopes to accomplish there. Nothing that will succeed, Moriarty assured the Otsutsuki. The nexus energy requires precise manipulation beyond her capabilities. Shall we proceed there directly and conclude this matter? Momoshiki nodded. The vessel has provided adequate entertainment, but my patience wanes. They turned as one toward the mountain range where the temple ruins stood, preparing to teleport directly there. Naruto, breathing heavily through damaged symbiote armor, realized his diversion had reached its limit. Wait, he called, the desperation in his voice genuine. You want the symbiote? Let's negotiate. Moriarty paused, an eyebrow raised in polite skepticism. A delaying tactic, Mr. Uzumaki. Beneath your usual straightforward approach. Not a tactic, Naruto insisted. A genuine offer. The symbiote is killing me. The lie was bold, but delivered with just enough physical evidence, the damaged armor, his labored breathing, the visible strain on his body, to create doubt. "Explain," Momoshiki demanded, pale eyes narrowing. "Without the Necrosword to stabilize it, the symbiote is consuming my chakra faster than I can generate it," Naruto continued, building on his deception. "Even with Kurama's help, I've got maybe a week before complete system failure." Moriarty studied him with cold calculation. "An interesting claim. And one that, if true, would explain certain energy fluctuations I've observed in your signature." "If the symbiote is degrading its host," Momoshiki said to Moriarty, "it would be of less value for my purposes." "Unless properly stabilized," Moriarty countered. "Which is precisely what I offered to provide." He turned back to Naruto. "A compelling narrative, Mr. Uzumaki, but one that contradicts my own observations of symbiote behavior. They survive by maintaining host viability, not destroying it." "This one's different," Naruto insisted. "It contained a god. It needs more than a human host can provide." While the exchange continued, Naruto was gathering nature energy, entering sage mode beneath the symbiote's cover, preparing for one final, desperate gambit. If he could summon enough power for a single overwhelming attack, he might buy Felicia the additional time she needed. "Even if what you say is true," Moriarty said, clearly humoring him now, "it only accelerates our timetable rather than changing it. The symbiote will be transferred to a more suitable host, the Otsutsuki remnant, and you will be relieved of your burden." His smile never reached his eyes. "Permanently, I'm afraid." "That's what I thought you'd say," Naruto replied, ceasing the pretense. The symbiote, responding to the massive influx of natural energy now flowing through Naruto's body, began to transform, taking on characteristics of his sage mode while maintaining its crimson and black coloration. "What is this?" Momoshiki demanded, sensing the sudden surge in Naruto's power. "Something new," Naruto answered, the symbiote forming patterns across his skin that resembled both the markings of sage mode and the swirling symbols of Uzumaki sealing techniques. Nature energy, Bija chakra, and symbiote matter, all working together. Before either opponent could react, Naruto slammed his palm into the ground. The technique wasn't one he'd ever performed before, a hybrid creation born of desperate circumstances and multiple power sources working in harmony. Sealing formulas spread outward from his hand, glowing with combined energies as they raced across the ground toward Momoshiki and Moriarty. "A sealing technique?" Moriarty observed, already shifting his dimensional frequency to avoid entrapment. But Naruto's technique wasn't a conventional seal. As the formulas reached their targets, they didn't attempt to contain or restrain, instead, they connected, creating a network of energy that linked Naruto, Momoshiki, and Moriarty in a triangular formation. "Not sealing," Naruto corrected, already feeling the immense strain of the technique. "Synchronizing. Forcing dimensional resonance." The effect was immediate and dramatic. Moriarty's carefully maintained control over his dimensional state faltered as Naruto's technique forced him into alignment with this specific reality. Simultaneously, Momoshiki found its energy absorption abilities disrupted by the same resonance effect. "Fascinating approach," Moriarty acknowledged, genuine surprise evident as he struggled against the synchronization. "Using my own transdimensional nature. Against me. But ultimately futile, this won't hold for long." "Doesn't need to," Naruto replied through gritted teeth, maintaining the technique through sheer willpower as the symbiote struggled to manage the competing energies flowing through his body. The synchronization field began to flicker as Moriarty and Momoshiki fought against its effects, their combined power gradually overwhelming Naruto's technique. But it had accomplished its purpose, buying precious minutes for Felicia to reach the nexus point and prepare whatever countermeasure she had in mind. As the field collapsed completely, Naruto dropped to one knee, the symbiote partially receding as it worked to repair the damage caused by channeling so much energy. Momoshiki and Moriarty stood free once more, both regarding Naruto with newfound wariness. An impressive delaying action, Moriarty conceded. But ultimately meaningless. Your companion cannot possibly understand the Nexus energies well enough to utilize them effectively. Perhaps not, Momoshiki agreed. But she has been given enough time to potentially disrupt them. We should proceed immediately. Indeed. Moriarty turned to Naruto with something almost like respect. A valiant effort, Mr. Uzumaki. Rest assured, your symbiote will serve a greater purpose in the new reality we create. Before Naruto could respond, Moriarty opened a dimensional portal beside them, not the swirling aperture of previous transitions but a precise doorway that led directly to the temple ruins. Momoshiki stepped through without hesitation, Moriarty following after a final nod to Naruto. The portal began to close behind them. With the last of his strength, Naruto forced himself to his feet and lunged forward, the symbiote extending to propel him through the narrowing gap. He tumbled through just as it sealed, landing heavily on ancient stone tiles now covered in moss and debris. The temple ruins spread before him, once a magnificent structure, now reduced to broken columns and crumbling walls open to the sky. Yet even in its diminished state, the power of the place was palpable. The nexus point beneath the temple still pulsed with energy that connected dimensions, thinning the barriers between worlds at this precise location. Felicia stood at the center of what had once been the main ritual chamber, working quickly with equipment she'd apparently prepared in advance. Around her, a circle of devices had been placed at strategic points, each emitting a subtle field that interacted with the nexus energy. Momoshiki and Moriarty approached from the opposite side of the chamber, their attention fixed on Felicia and her work. Impressive improvisation, Ms. Hardy, Moriarty called. Symbiote containment field generators, if I'm not mistaken. Repurposed from your world's technology and adapted to function in this dimension. Felicia looked up, spotting Naruto at the chamber entrance and giving him a quick nod before turning her attention to the newcomers. Just a little something I've been working on with Konoha's research division. Call it an insurance policy. Against what, precisely? Moriarty inquired, genuinely curious as he studied the arrangement. The field you're generating won't contain either myself or the Otsutsuki. It's not meant to contain you, she replied, activating a final device that completed the circle. It's meant to contain this. From her equipment belt, she produced a small vial containing what appeared to be liquid darkness, refined symbiote matter, similar to what they'd seen in Moriarty's laboratory. A sample from your own lab, Felicia explained, noting Moriarty's raised eyebrow. I'm a thief, remember? I never leave a job empty-handed. And what do you hope to accomplish with that modest sample? Momoshiki asked dismissively. It is nothing compared to the fully bonded symbiote within the vessel. Alone? Not much, Felicia admitted. But combined with the nexus energy and a little knowledge of symbiote behavior. She uncapped the vial, pouring the contents onto the ancient stone at her feet. The liquid darkness spread outward, seemingly attracted to the containment field rather than repelled by it. As it touched the energy boundary, it began to change, growing, multiplying, drawing power from the nexus point beneath. She's using the nexus as a catalyst, Moriarty realized, a note of admiration in his voice. Accelerating the symbiote's reproductive cycle while containing it within a controlled space. Quite ingenious. Naruto pushed himself to his feet, the symbiote recovering enough to form a protective layer once more. He moved toward Felicia, keeping a wary distance from both Momoshiki and Moriarty. What are you doing? He asked quietly as he reached her side. Creating options, she replied, eyes on the expanding pool of symbiote matter. They want your symbiote, but they're not the only ones who can play the dimensional energy game. The contained symbiote mass continued to grow, forming tentative shapes before collapsing back into itself, searching for direction, for purpose. Felicia pressed a button on her wrist device, sending a specific frequency through the containment field. That's a calling signal, she explained to Naruto. Similar to what Knull would use to command his creations. The symbiote will respond to it, organizing itself according to the pattern encoded in the signal. You're creating a new symbiote, Naruto realized. One under your control. Not control exactly, she corrected. More like, suggestion. Enough to keep it from bonding with either of them immediately. Moriarty watched the process with clinical interest, making no move to interfere. A fascinating approach, Ms. Hardy, but ultimately misguided. A newly formed symbiote lacks the power and experience of Mr. Uzumaki's bonded specimen. It will be easily subdued and absorbed. Maybe, Felicia conceded. Unless it has something the others don't. Before anyone could react, she reached into the containment field, plunging her hand directly into the growing symbiote mass. The living darkness surged upward, enveloping her arm to the elbow before she withdrew it, now coated in a sleek black substance that moved with purpose rather than chaotic searching. Felicia! Naruto exclaimed, reaching for her in alarm. It's okay, she assured him, flexing her symbiote-covered hand. Partial bonding, not full integration. I'm giving it direction, purpose. Momoshiki's patience finally exhausted, the Otsutsuki stepped forward. Enough of these diversions. The power of the symbiote will be mine, as agreed. It turned to Moriarty. Proceed with the extraction, Boundary Walker. Of course, Moriarty replied smoothly. Though I should note that the situation has evolved somewhat from our original parameters. He gestured toward the containment field, where the symbiote mass continued to grow and organize under Felicia's partial guidance. The Nexus energy is now being channeled in patterns I hadn't anticipated. Fascinating adaptation. While they spoke, Naruto felt something stir within his mindscape. Kurama, who had been conserving energy during the earlier battles, now rose to full awareness. The Great Fox's presence expanded, filling Naruto's consciousness with renewed power and clarity. They seek to separate us, Kurama rumbled. The symbiote from both of us, and then me from you. We cannot allow this. The symbiote, sensing Kurama's resurgence, responded with its own determination, not the hungry aggression it had shown in earlier battles, but something more focused, more integrated with Naruto's own will. We won't, Naruto assured both entities silently. We're stronger together than apart. All three of us. Aloud, he addressed their adversaries. Whatever you're planning, it won't work. The symbiote, Kurama, and I, we're not separate powers you can pick apart. We're something new, something even you don't fully understand. A bold claim, Moriarty responded. Let's test it, shall we? He raised a hand, activating a device on his wrist that emitted a high-frequency pulse aimed directly at Naruto. The symbiote reacted violently, rippling across Naruto's skin as if trying to tear itself away. Pain lanced through his body, the bond between them suddenly under attack at its most fundamental level. A specific resonance frequency, Moriarty explained casually as Naruto doubled over. It disrupts the molecular bonding between symbiote and host without harming either. Standard procedure in my world for separating unwilling partnerships. Naruto fought to maintain the bond, but the pain was excruciating, like having his skin peeled away molecule by molecule. The symbiote's distress echoed through his consciousness, its panic feeding into his own. Stop fighting it, Mr. Uzumaki, Moriarty advised. The separation is inevitable. The more you resist, the more damage you'll sustain. Through the haze of pain, Naruto became aware of movement nearby. Felicia, her symbiote-covered arm extended toward the containment field. The mass within had continued to grow, now forming a distinctly humanoid shape that mirrored her movements. You forgot something important about symbiotes, she called to Moriarty, her voice tight with concentration. They learn from each other. They communicate across distances. And they remember. The containment field flickered as she adjusted its parameters, not to strengthen it but to create specific gaps, controlled points where the energy barrier became permeable. Through these openings, tendrils of the newly formed symbiote extended outward, reaching toward Naruto. What are you doing? Momoshiki demanded, moving to intercept the tendrils. Evening the odds, Felicia replied, directing the new symbiote with subtle movements of her partially bonded arm. The tendrils reached Naruto just as Moriarty's device began to separate his symbiote from his skin. But instead of attacking, the new symbiote melded with the original, reinforcing the bond, adding its mass to strengthen the connection that Moriarty was trying to break. Clever, Moriarty acknowledged, adjusting his device. But ultimately futile. I can simply recalibrate to account for the additional mass. What he hadn't anticipated, however, was Kurama's intervention. The nine-tailed fox channeled his chakra not against the symbiote but through it, creating a network that bound all elements together, Naruto's body, the original symbiote, the new symbiote mass, and Kurama's own energy. The pain subsided as the bond stabilized, strengthened beyond what it had been before. Naruto straightened, the combined symbiotes forming a new appearance around him, the crimson and black armor now threaded with orange chakra patterns that glowed like veins of fire beneath the surface. That's not possible, Moriarty said, genuine surprise showing through his usual composure. The molecular disruption should have worked on a normal symbiote bond, Naruto finished for him. But this isn't normal. It never was. The nexus point beneath them pulsed, responding to the unique energy signature created by the combination of Bijou chakra and multiple symbiotes integrated with a human host. The ancient stone floor began to glow with patterns that hadn't been visible moments before, sealing formulas older than the hidden villages, perhaps older than shinobi civilization itself. The nexus recognizes the convergence, Moriarty observed, fascination overriding concern in his voice. 3 distinct energy types, perfectly balanced within a single vessel. Momoshiki, less interested in the theoretical implications, attacked without warning, launching a barrage of chakra projectiles at Naruto. The combined symbiote responded instantaneously, forming a shield that absorbed the impacts while Kurama's chakra converted the energy into usable power. Your time is over, Otsutsuki, Naruto stated, the symbiote mask receding to reveal his face, now marked with a combination of sage mode patterns and symbiote texturing. This world isn't yours to harvest. All worlds are ours to harvest, Momoshiki snarled, its aristocratic composure cracking in the face of unexpected resistance. You are merely cattle who occasionally learn to use tools. Nothing more. Then you've underestimated the cattle, Naruto replied, symbiote tendrils extending from his back to form wing-like structures as he launched himself forward. The battle that followed defied conventional understanding of ninja combat. Naruto moved with impossible speed, the combined symbiotes enhancing his physical abilities while Kurama's chakra provided raw power and sage mode offered heightened awareness. Momoshiki countered with increasingly desperate techniques, absorbing ambient energy to fuel attacks that would have leveled mountains. Moriarty observed from the periphery, making no move to directly involve himself as the titans clashed. His attention seemed divided between the battle and the nexus energies pulsing beneath them, which responded to each exchange with increasing intensity. Felicia, meanwhile, maintained her partial connection to the newly formed symbiote, using it to strengthen the containment field that prevented Moriarty from fully accessing the nexus point. The field flickered and wavered under the strain of the energies being unleashed around it, but held, a testament to her understanding of both symbiote behavior and dimensional mechanics. Your interference has reached its limit, Ms. Hardy, Moriarty finally addressed her, approaching the containment field. While Mr. Uzumaki and the Otsutsuki remnant are occupied with their rather spectacular confrontation, perhaps we should discuss your role in the adjusted parameters. There's nothing to discuss, Felicia replied, maintaining her focus on the containment field. You want to merge dimensions regardless of the consequences. I'm not interested in that conversation. A pity, Moriarty sighed. I had hoped your adaptability and intelligence would allow you to see the greater picture. The confluence is not destruction, Ms. Hardy, it is evolution. A new reality that incorporates the best elements of both worlds. With you as the architect, she noted. Deciding what stays and what goes. Someone must, he replied simply. The natural process would be chaotic, unpredictable. My guidance ensures optimal outcomes. Optimal for whom? Moriarty smiled thinly. For those who deserve to survive the transition, of course. While they spoke, Naruto and Momoshiki's battle had reached a crescendo. The Otsutsuki, realizing its conventional attacks were being countered too effectively, shifted strategies, opening a small dimensional rift and attempting to draw Naruto into it. "Your world will follow you into oblivion, vessel," Momoshiki declared as the rift pulled at Naruto with inexorable force. "Without your protection, it will fall to the Otsutsuki as intended." Naruto struggled against the gravitational pull, symbiote tendrils anchoring him to the temple floor. But the strain was immense, the rift's power increasing as Momoshiki channeled more energy into it. "Naruto!" Felicia called, seeing his predicament. "The Nexus. Use it." Understanding flashed in Naruto's eyes. The Nexus point wasn't just a weak spot between dimensions, it was a focal point where reality could be manipulated by those with sufficient knowledge and power. And while he lacked Moriarty's theoretical understanding, he had something potentially more valuable, a practical, physical connection to multiple forms of dimensional energy. Releasing his anchors, Naruto allowed himself to be pulled toward the rift, but not directly into it. Instead, he angled his movement to pass over the exact center of the Nexus point, where the ancient patterns glowed most intensely. As he passed over it, Naruto drove his fist directly into the center of the pattern, channeling every form of energy at his disposal, Bija chakra, sage energy, and symbiote matter, into a single, concentrated point of impact. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The Nexus energy surged upward, engulfing Naruto in a pillar of light that contained all colors and none. The rift Momoshiki had created collapsed in on itself, the dimensional energy redirected by the Nexus response. Momoshiki screamed in rage and disbelief as its technique was not only nullified but reversed, the collapsing rift creating a vacuum that pulled at the Otsutsuki rather than Naruto. "This cannot be." The Nexus responds to him. "Fascinating," Moriarty observed, eyes wide with genuine wonder. The Nexus recognizes him as a dimensional constant, an entity that exists simultaneously across multiple planes. The symbiote connection to another universe, combined with the Biju's extradimensional nature, he's created a stable focal point. The Nexus energy continued to build, the pillar of light expanding to encompass more of the temple ruins. Ancient stones hummed with power long dormant, responding to the awakening of forces they had been designed to channel. The temple wasn't built to facilitate the confluence, Felicia realized, watching the pattern spread across the floor and up the remaining walls. It was built to contain it, to prevent uncontrolled dimensional merging. A failsafe, Moriarty agreed, his usual composure replaced by excited curiosity. Constructed by those who understood the dangers of dimensional intersection points. How utterly fascinating. At the center of the maelstrom, Naruto hung suspended in the pillar of light, the combined symbiotes flowing around him in patterns too complex to track. Kurama's chakra formed a framework within which both his body and the symbiotes existed in perfect balance, neither dominating, all three aspects working in harmony. From this vantage point, Naruto could perceive dimensions beyond normal consciousness. He saw the threads that connected realities, the barriers that separated them, and the points where those barriers naturally thinned. He saw Momoshiki's true nature, a fragment of a greater being, desperately seeking to reconstitute itself through the absorption of sufficient power. And he saw Moriarty as he truly was, a human consciousness that had expanded beyond its original parameters, existing across multiple planes simultaneously but anchored to none of them. Most importantly, he saw the pattern, the template that the temple founders had created to maintain dimensional stability at this nexus point. With newfound understanding guided by the combined wisdom of Kurama, the symbiotes, and his own intuition, Naruto began to reshape the energies around him, reinforcing the pattern rather than disrupting it. "No!" Momoshiki howled, recognizing what was happening. "The vessel is strengthening the barriers. The harvest will be prevented." The Otsutsuki launched itself at Naruto, attempting to disrupt the process. But the Nexus energy responded to the attack, repelling Momoshiki with a force proportional to its hostile intent. The remnant was thrown back, its physical form destabilizing as it collided with the temple wall. A logical development, Moriarty commented, seemingly unperturbed by the collapse of his plans. The Nexus has accepted Mr. Uzumaki as its focus point. Any attempt to disrupt that connection is now interpreted as an attack on the Nexus itself. He turned to Felicia with something like respect. Your companion has effectively become the guardian of dimensional integrity for this region. Quite an elevation in responsibility. Felicia, still maintaining the containment field though it was becoming redundant as the temple's own systems activated, regarded Moriarty with suspicion. You don't seem particularly upset about this turn of events. My dear Miss Hardy, upset? Over the discovery of a functional dimensional stabilization mechanism of previously unknown design. He adjusted his cuffs, a gesture jarringly mundane amid the cosmic energies swirling around them. Quite the contrary. This is knowledge worth far more than any single attempt at confluence. You're collecting data, she realized. This was never about succeeding here and now. It was about understanding how it all works. Progress is rarely linear, Moriarty acknowledged. And while today's particular approach has proven unviable, the information gathered will inform future iterations. He glanced at the pillar of light where Naruto continued to harmonize the Nexus energies. Your friend has become quite remarkable, a perfect synthesis of elements that should, by all theoretical models, be incompatible. Before Felicia could respond, the Nexus energy spiked again, the pillar of light expanding outward in a controlled wave that passed through everything in the temple ruins. As it touched Momoshiki, the Otsutsuki remnant shrieked in what sounded like equal parts rage and fear. The barriers are strengthening, it snarled, its form becoming less substantial as the wave passed through it. This dimension is being sealed against outside influence. Not sealed, came Naruto's voice from within the light, eerily calm and somehow both singular and plural simultaneously. Stabilized. Protected against forced intrusion, but still connected to the greater multiverse. The light began to coalesce, drawing inward as the Nexus energy found its equilibrium. Naruto descended slowly, feet touching the ancient stone as the pillar contracted to a manageable corona around him. The combined symbiote still covered him in rippling patterns of crimson and black, but there was a new quality to them, less chaotic, more structured, as if they had found their proper form. This nexus will no longer serve your purposes, Naruto addressed both Momoshiki and Moriarty, his voice resonating with the harmonic overtones of multiple consciousnesses in perfect alignment. The barriers between dimensions will maintain their natural integrity. Momoshiki, its form now flickering like a faulty projection, hissed in defiance. This changes nothing, vessel. The Otsutsuki have harvested worlds for millennia. We will find another way. Perhaps, Naruto acknowledged. But not here. Not now. He raised a hand, and the Nexus energy responded, creating a localized disruption around the Otsutsuki remnant. Return to your own plane, Momoshiki. This world is under protection. The disruption expanded, forming a controlled aperture that pulled at the remnant's unstable form. Unlike Moriarty's precisely engineered portals or Momoshiki's chakra-based rifts, this was a natural function of the Nexus itself, a correction of dimensional anomalies. This is not the end, Ninetail's vessel, Momoshiki declared as its form was drawn into the aperture. The Otsutsuki are eternal. We will return. And we'll be waiting, Naruto replied simply. The aperture closed with a soft pulse of energy, leaving no trace of the Otsutsuki remnant. The Nexus settled further, ancient patterns still glowing but with reduced intensity as the immediate threat receded. Moriarty observed the process with academic interest, making no move to interfere or escape. When Naruto turned his attention to him, he merely inclined his head in acknowledgement. Most illuminating, he commented. I don't suppose you'd be willing to discuss the theoretical underpinnings of what you've just accomplished. From a purely scientific perspective, of course. You're not in a position to make requests, Naruto replied, the symbiotes rippling with residual power. You manipulated the Abyss cult, experimented on people, and tried to force dimensional merger regardless of the consequences. All true, Moriarty admitted without apparent remorse. Though I would argue the consequences you fear are merely the natural resistance to evolutionary progress. Dimensions, like species, must adapt or stagnate. That's not your decision to make, Felicia interjected, approaching to stand beside Naruto. The partial symbiote bond on her arm had expanded slightly, covering her shoulder and forming patterns that complemented Naruto's without mimicking them. A philosophical difference we're unlikely to resolve in this context, Moriarty conceded. So what now? Will you attempt to imprison me? Execute me for crimes against reality itself? I'm curious what justice looks like for transgressions that most legal systems haven't conceived of. Naruto was silent for a moment, communing with the multiple consciousnesses that now existed in harmony within him. When he spoke, it was with quiet certainty rather than righteous anger. Neither, he decided. The Nexus has its own solution for entities that exist across dimensional boundaries without proper anchoring. As if responding to his words, the ancient patterns beneath them pulsed with renewed purpose. Moriarty looked down, genuine concern replacing his academic detachment as the energy began to coalesce around him. Ah, he said softly. Dimensional realignment. The Nexus is identifying my primary reality of origin and preparing to return me there exclusively. He looked up at Naruto with newfound respect. More elegant than I would have expected from someone with your particular background. My compliments. It's not my solution, Naruto clarified. The temple builders understood dimensional mechanics better than either of us. I'm just facilitating what they designed. Even so. Moriarty adjusted his tie one final time as the energy field around him intensified. A word of advice, Mr. Uzumaki, before I take my involuntary departure. What you've accomplished here, the synthesis of bijou, symbiote, and human consciousness into a harmonious whole, is unprecedented in my considerable experience across multiple realities. Your point? Felicia asked, wary of last-minute manipulation. Simply this, such uniqueness inevitably attracts attention. The Otsutsuki are merely one of many cosmic entities that seek power across dimensional boundaries. His form began to waver as the realignment process accelerated. You have made yourself visible on a cosmic scale. Be prepared for the scrutiny that follows. With those ominous words, the realignment completed its work. Moriarty's form compressed and then simply vanished, leaving no trace beyond a brief flicker of energy that quickly dissipated. Silence fell over the temple ruins, broken only by the soft hum of Nexus energy as it continued to stabilize. Naruto let out a long breath, the symbiotes gradually receding until only his eyes showed evidence of their presence, blue irises ringed with crimson against black sclera. Is he gone for good? Felicia asked, the partial symbiote on her arm likewise retreating to a more manageable presence, a bracelet-like band around her wrist rather than the previous coverage. From this dimension, yes, Naruto confirmed. The Nexus identified his original reality and forced his consciousness to reconsolidate there exclusively. He can't exist across multiple planes anymore. Will that stop him? Naruto shook his head. Probably not permanently. Someone that brilliant, that determined, he'll find other approaches eventually. But he's lost his foothold here, and the cult's infrastructure has been dismantled. They looked around at the temple ruins, which now hummed with restored purpose. The ancient structure, built on a natural nexus point between dimensions, had been reactivated as a stabilization mechanism rather than a potential gateway for invasion or merger. So what happens now? Felicia asked, echoing her question from days earlier but in a very different context. Naruto reached out, taking her hand, the one with the symbiote bracelet, in his own. Now we go home. Report to Kakashi. Start the long process of securing other nexus points that might exist across our world. Our world, she repeated, raising an eyebrow. A smile touched his lips. If you want it to be. The nexus is stabilized, not sealed. Travel between dimensions is still possible with the right knowledge and technique. If you decide you want to return to your Earth someday. I don't, Felicia said with unexpected firmness. She looked down at the symbiote bracelet on her wrist, then back to Naruto. I found something here I never had there. Purpose. Connection. Her gaze softened. Someone who understands what it means to share your life with something beyond yourself. The moment was interrupted by a crackling sound from Felicia's communication device, the first signal that had gotten through since they entered the temple ruins. Naruto. Felicia. Do you copy? Sakura's voice came through, tense with concern. The energy signature from the mountains just spiked off the charts. What's your status? Felicia activated the reply function. We're good. Threats neutralized. Nexus stabilized. Details when we get back to Konoha. Understood, came Sakura's relieved response. Extraction team is standing by if needed. Negative on extraction, Naruto replied, taking the communicator. We'll make our own way back. ETA approximately 3 hours. As they prepared to leave the temple ruins, Naruto paused for one final look at the ancient structure that had played such a pivotal role in events. The Nexus energy had settled into a sustainable rhythm, the pattern still visible but no longer glowing with urgent power. We should assign guardians, he said thoughtfully. People who understand the importance of what this place represents. Agreed, Felicia replied, following his gaze. Though I think it already has one guardian. She reached out, fingers lightly touching the symbiote pattern still visible beneath his skin. Or several, depending on how you count. Naruto smiled, acknowledging the truth in her words. The harmonic balance he had achieved with Kurama and the symbiotes had created something new, a consciousness that existed simultaneously as separate entities and as a unified whole. It was too complex to fully explain, yet felt more natural than he could have imagined. Let's go home, he said simply. They departed the temple side by side, leaving behind ancient stones now humming with renewed purpose. Above them, the sky had cleared to perfect blue, unmarred by dimensional distortions or the unnatural storms that had accompanied the confluence attempt. As they traveled, a comfortable silence settled between them. The symbiotes, Naruto's fully bonded companion and Felicia's partial connection, occasionally reached toward each other with tendrils that twined briefly before retreating, a physical manifestation of the bond forming between their hosts. Inside his mindscape, Naruto found a transformed landscape. Where once Kurama had occupied a separate chamber, isolated from his consciousness by bars and seals, now the space flowed organically. The great fox lounged in an environment that resembled a forest clearing, 9 tails swishing contentedly. Nearby, the symbiote essence had taken a more defined form, a pool of living darkness that occasionally shaped itself into patterns that echoed both Kurama's features and Naruto's human form. This feels right, Naruto observed to both entities. Balanced. A true symbiosis, Kurama rumbled, one massive eye regarding the darkness with something approaching acceptance. Not parasite and host, but partnership. The symbiote pulsed in agreement, its consciousness more accessible now, more aligned with both Naruto and Kurama. Where once it had carried echoes of Knull's malevolence, now it reflected the values of its chosen companions, protection, connection, and a fierce commitment to maintaining balance between light and darkness. Returning to the physical world, Naruto found Felicia watching him with understanding. Checking in with the roommates, she asked with a small smile. Something like that, he confirmed. Things have shifted. In a good way. I can tell, she replied, gesturing to his appearance. The symbiote, even when not manifested as armor, had altered his basic look subtly, his whisker marks more pronounced, his movements more fluid, his presence somehow both more grounded and more otherworldly simultaneously. What about yours? He asked, nodding toward the bracelet-like symbiote on her wrist. How's it settling in? It's young. Learning. Curious. She flexed her hand, the symbiote rippling in response. Not like yours, no god essence or ancient memories. Just, potential. Possibility. Sounds like a good match, Naruto observed with a smile that she returned easily. As they approached Konoha, the village came into view, peaceful in the afternoon sun, apparently untouched by the cosmic confrontations that had transpired only hours before. But appearances could be deceiving. The world had changed today, whether its inhabitants realized it or not. Dimensions had brushed against each other, beings from beyond conventional reality had walked the earth, and new forms of consciousness had emerged. At the village gates, a welcoming committee awaited, Kakashi, Sakura, Shikamaru, and several ANBU operatives, all showing varying degrees of relief at their safe return. The debriefing would be extensive, the implications of what had occurred far-reaching, the preparations for potential future incursions necessarily thorough. But for now, as they crossed the threshold into Konoha, Naruto and Felicia exchanged a glance of shared understanding. Whatever came next, whether further dimensional threats, Otsutsuki machinations, or simply the day-to-day challenges of integrating their unique abilities into a world still recovering from war, they would face it together. Darkness and light, chaos and order, alien and familiar, all flowing through them in balance, a harmony of opposites that created something greater than the sum of its parts. "Welcome home," Naruto said quietly, the words meant for both Felicia and the symbiotes that had become part of their shared journey. "Home," she agreed, her hand finding his as they walked forward into whatever the future might hold. 6 months later, Naruto stood on the Hokage monument once more, but not alone. Beside him, Felicia leaned against his shoulder, watching the village lights come on as dusk settled over Konoha. Her platinum hair, longer now and partially braided in the style favored by kunoichi on extended missions, caught the last rays of sunlight. "Hard to believe it's been half a year," she remarked, the symbiote bracelet on her wrist occasionally extending small tendrils that played across her fingers like affectionate pets. "A busy half-year," Naruto agreed. The months since their confrontation with Momoshiki and Moriarty had indeed been filled with activity. 5 other nexus points had been identified across the shinobi world, each now secured and monitored by specially trained teams. The Abyss cult, without Moriarty's guidance, had fragmented into smaller groups that occasionally caused trouble but posed no serious threat to dimensional stability. More significantly, Naruto's unique status as what Kakashi had termed a dimensional constant, a being whose consciousness bridged multiple forms of reality, had led to new responsibilities. Working with researchers from all 5 great nations, he had helped develop protocols for identifying and responding to extra-dimensional threats, using the harmonized awareness granted by his perfectly balanced symbiosis with Kurama and the symbiote. Felicia, too, had found her place. Her background as both thief and occasional hero, combined with her first-hand knowledge of another dimension's technologies and threats, made her invaluable to Konoha's intelligence division. She now led a specialized team focused on securing artifacts and information that could impact dimensional stability, a role that utilized her unique skill set while providing the purpose she had sought for so long. "Kakashi's going to announce his retirement soon," Naruto said, breaking a comfortable silence that had settled between them. Felicia glanced at him. "Are you ready for that?" The question encompassed far more than the obvious succession plan that would make Naruto the 7th Hokage. It addressed the fundamental changes in his nature, the threefold consciousness that now defined his existence, the cosmic awareness that occasionally provided glimpses of threats beyond conventional perception, the responsibility of maintaining not just village security but dimensional integrity. "As ready as I'll ever be," he replied honestly. "Having you helps. Having them helps." He touched his chest, indicating the harmonious balance of human, bijou, and symbiote that now existed within him. "The god of the abyss, becoming Hokage," Felicia mused with a teasing smile. "Should be interesting." "Not a god," Naruto corrected, though he smiled at the nickname that had spread through the village after reports of his transformed abilities had circulated. "Just someone trying to protect what matters." "Speaking of protection," Felicia said, her tone shifting to something more serious. "Any word from the border sensors about that energy signature from last week?" Naruto shook his head. "Nothing concrete. It wasn't Otsutsuki, and it wasn't Moriarty's dimensional frequency. Something else." He frowned slightly. "Something watching, assessing." "Moriarty's warning," Felicia recalled. Such uniqueness inevitably attracts attention. "We'll handle it," Naruto said with quiet confidence. "Whatever comes next." The symbiote rippled beneath his skin in agreement, while Kurama rumbled contentedly within his mindscape. The three aspects of his being, human determination, Bijou power, and symbiote adaptability, aligned in perfect harmony, each enhancing the others without domination or suppression. Felicia's symbiote, smaller and younger but growing in capability, extended a tendril from her wrist to touch Naruto's hand, a gesture of connection between the paired entities that mirrored the bond between their hosts. "Whatever comes next," she agreed, turning to face him fully. In the fading light, her green eyes reflected both the determination that had always defined her and the contentment she had found in this new world, this new purpose, this new relationship. As darkness settled over Konoha, two figures remained atop the Hokage monument, human forms housing powers beyond conventional understanding, guardians of dimensional integrity, protectors of a village and a world that had become home to both. The ninja who had once been shunned as a monster now embraced the darkness within him as part of a greater balance. The thief who had once trusted no one now found strength in connection rather than isolation. Together, they stood at the intersection of worlds, not as victims of circumstance but as architects of their own destiny. Darkness and light. Chaos and order. All flowing through them in perfect balance. The god of the abyss and his queen of shadows, watching over a world that would never fully understand what had nearly been lost, or what continued to protect it from threats beyond mortal comprehension. And in the spaces between dimensions, in the void where realities brushed against each other like ripples in cosmic waters, something observed. Something waited. Something prepared. But that was a story for another day. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.